Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto unlocked a KekkeiGenkai scene only twice in recorded history part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Naruto was running down the streets with tears in his eyes. Why wouldn't anyone ever leave him alone? All he wanted to do was play at the festival, but the second he walked out of his apartment he was chased by a horde of villagers. Die, demon! You should have been killed 8 years ago. Today we finish what the fourth started. Naruto continued to run. Each year he was chased by a mob only to be saved by Umbu, or Hokage. But he's never had to run this long before. Naruto runs into an alley hoping to get away from the mob, but to his horror it was a dead end. He was trapped. The mob stopped briefly and Naruto wondered what they were doing when a gruff-looking man stepped out and appeared to be the one who started the mob. He began to speak. Demon, for 8 years you have gone unpunished, and foolishly protected by the Sandaime Hokage, but no longer. For today, while the Umbu are kept out of the streets by the civilian council, the 8-year anniversary of your defeat by the Sandaime Hokage, you finally shall receive your punishment. As the mob closed and Naruto began to cry. He wasn't going to be saved this time. He was going to die. Inside the seal. Most people probably think of the Kyuubi as a fearless beast that without a second thought could level cities to the ground. Well, that is normally true, but there was one thing. That even the Kyuubi was afraid of death. Kyuubi was scared, cross that he was absolutely terrified. Kyuubi was immortal, but the fool Sandaime bound him to his host, so when Naruto dies so will he. He wasn't some angel that goes to heaven. No, he knew where he would go, and it was not a pleasant place. Kyuubi knew he would reform many years later, but he didn't want to find out what's spending all the years in hell while his body reformed. Kyuubi was currently frantically trying to figure out a way to save himself by slamming himself against the cage bars, trying to dig under the bars, and beating the bars with his tails. There was no way to escape. The blasted Yandaime's seal was just as strong. Kyuubi collapsed against the ground, seemingly giving up when he felt an ancient presence deep inside that he hadn't sensed before. He immediately channeled his chakra to that point in a last effort to save himself. If he succeeded, then his host would never be the same again. Outside the seal, Naruto was feeling pain, so much pain as the rain of punches, kicks, and kunai seemed to never end. Suddenly everyone stopped and backed up a few steps, and then the man that Naruto could tell was the person who stepped forward earlier came up with a dagger in his hand and stated, "Demon, your time has come to an end. It is time to face your punishment, which is death." As the man stepped forward, Naruto began to cry again, asking aloud, "What have I done? I've never hurt anyone, honest." His pleas fell on deaf ears as the man continued to walk forward. As the man was bringing his hand down for the final blow, Naruto cringed for the blow to come, but suddenly he felt incredibly powerful. He thrust his hands out while shouting, "Shinra Tensei! Almighty push!" Suddenly everything that was in the alleyway found itself thrown a great distance before they hit the ground unconscious. 1 hour later, a man was walking down the street back to his apartment after a night of drinking with his team. He had long black hair, angular snake-like eyes, and pale skin. This was Orochimaru, student of the Sandaime Hokage and member of the legendary Densatsu no Sannin. When Orochimaru hasn't betrayed the village yet, and won't until the Shippuden arc, saw all the people strewn all over the place, he immediately went on guard. When he looked around he couldn't see what could have caused this. When he was looking around he heard what sounded like a young boy crying. Orochimaru immediately went to where he heard the boy crying to see if the little boy saw what happened. When he went into the alley, the first thing he noticed was that the small boy looked terrible. Underfed, beaten, and stabbed. His first thought was, why would anyone do this to such a young boy? That's when he noticed who the boy was. He was the Force Legacy, the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune. Don't get him wrong, he wasn't an idiot. He knew how strong the seal was and there was no chance of the fox breaking loose on its own. Orochimaru wasn't a fool. He knew that those people probably had tried to kill the young boy, but how they ended up like this was something that he did want to know. When he walked toward the boy he noticed Naruto stop crying, and then Naruto said so sadly, "Please don't kill me, I didn't do anything wrong." Orochimaru might not be the nicest guy around, but he quickly stopped walking, kneeled down, and said to him, "I don't want to hurt you, how about we take you to the hospital and get your wounds treated?" Naruto said solemnly with his eyes still closed, "They won't treat me at the hospital. They say they don't want the patients being exposed to a demon." At this point Orochimaru was flabbergasted. He knew there were a lot of fools inside Konoha, but he didn't realize that most of the village were complete idiots. To not let a young boy in who was injured into the hospital was outrageous. Orochimaru thought for a second, said, "Come, I have a subordinate who is trained as a medic. He will treat you and fix you up." Naruto looked up at the young man and opened his eyes. Orochimaru was shocked, cause instead deep blue that he had expected, it was purple with a ripple pattern. Orochimaru grinned widely. Orochimaru only saw this dojutsu once before when he went to check on Jiraiya when he was training the 3 orphans from AIM. Orochimaru knew what this eye could do when Jiraiya showed off the kid's abilities. Maybe Orochimaru had found someone to take under his wing as an apprentice. And yes, Anko was his apprentice, but he taught her all he could. As promised, Orochimaru took Naruto to Kabuto to heal him. When Kabuto left for a minute to go get some rubbing alcohol to disinfect Naruto's cuts, when Orochimaru pulled him aside, "Kabuto, I want you to look out for the boy, and when you're done treating him take him home and make sure he is safe." His eyes intrigue me and I wish to make him my apprentice in order to learn more about his eyes. Kabuto's eyes widened. Are you sure, master? This is a great risk considering who you are. This could hurt your reputation here in Konoha. Orochimaru only chuckled while stating I couldn't care less what those foolish villagers think of me. I am a Sannin, an icon of power. At this Orochimaru shined away to research more about the boy's eyes. 3 days later, council chambers. Hiruzen, surely you see that thing is a threat to the village and must be killed, said Hamura. His counterpart Kohara decided to speak up and stated, he attacked and injured several villagers. That brat must be exiled or executed. Suddenly from the door a voice stated, I wouldn't do that if I were you. And just who do you think you are barging in here? Orochimaru, stuttered a shocked Koharu. When the boy was attacked by those people that you claim he attacked, he somehow unlocked a KekkeiGenkai seen only twice ever before. The Sandaime decided to speak up at that point. Orochimaru, what did Naruto unlock? And who were the 2 others that had it? Orochimaru answered his sensei's question. The eye is called the Rinnegan, and is immensely powerful. I'd be willing to say stronger than the Sharingan. The council was flabbergasted. They had always thought that the Sharingan was the most powerful eye in existence, but here was one of their most powerful shinobi telling them that an 8-year-old now had something much stronger than that. Hamura slowly stuttered out, who were the other 2 T2 have this ability? Orochimaru smirked and stated, one was an orphan in AIM named Nagato. Unbeknownst to the rest of the council, Danzo growled at the mention of Nagato. And the second, Orochimaru continued, was the legendary Rikudo Sannin. The room was suddenly lacking oxygen as the whole council simultaneously gasped. Even the Sandaime was gaping like a fish out of water. Finally Councillor Hirano screamed out, I thought the Rikudo Sannin was just a legend. Everyone winced at the volume of the Banshee Queen. As Orochimaru chuckled, only a civilian would be so naive to believe that in the ninja world that there is any such thing as a legend. All legends must start from somewhere, and the Rinnegan is what made the Rikudo Sannin so great. So don't you fools see, Orochimaru continued, if you exile or execute Naruto you threaten to lose someone who has the potential to be the most powerful ninja in existence. At that statement Danzo spoke up, Hiruzen, let me take the boy into my root program. Not only shall he become loyal to Konoha, he shall become stronger than anyone could imagine. At that the Sandaime spoke, no Danzo, I will not permit it. I said no 8 years ago and my decision hasn't changed. But we do need someone to train him because surely the other villages will hear about this and try to kidnap him or kill him. That won't be a problem, sensei. Orochimaru spoke up, I have decided to train him myself. Are you sure, Orochimaru? Asked the Sarutobi clan head. I thought you weren't going to take another student after Anko. I thought so too, sensei, but his eyes intrigue me and there isn't another person in this village that can train him as well as I could. Except for Jiraiya, but he's only in the village every once in a while and can't take a student. And Anko didn't have the aptitude for a weapon like I do, and I couldn't teach her most of my elemental jutsu due to her having a different elemental affinity. But with the Rinnegan he can master any type of ninjutsu. I see, said the Sandaime. I approve, make him strong, Orochimaru. Of course, sensei, responded Orochimaru. Meanwhile with Naruto had gone to sleep when he appeared before a giant cage in what appeared to be a giant sewer. He was looking around when he heard a deep growl. Naruto immediately jumped up and shouted, Who's there? Not even a second after he said this, 2 glowing red eyes opened up and a dark form with 9 tails revealed itself and calmly stated, I am known as Kyuubi. Naruto was terrified when he saw the giant fox. Despite his fear of the giant fox he shouted at it. That's a lie. The Yondaime killed the Kyuubi, you couldn't be him. At this the demon just chuckled and said, Foolish young mortal, one cannot kill me. I am a living mass of chakra. The only way to defeat me is to seal me. No one has the power to defeat me. Only one has ever lived with the ability to match my power, and he died over 1,000 years ago. Naruto could believe it. The Yondaime didn't kill the Kyuubi? Though what Naruto didn't understand was why he was in the sewers, and also why the Kyuubi was stuck in the sewers. So Naruto asked, Why'd the Yondaime seal you in the sewers? At this the Kyuubi gave a loud and guttural laugh. After he finished laughing, the Kyuubi spoke, Child, this isn't the sewers, this is your mind. At this Naruto screamed at the demon, What do you mean my mind? Kyuubi chuckled at the young boy's antics and calmly spoke, It is quite simple. The Yondaime took you when you were a baby and sealed me into you. Naruto collapsed to his knees. Suddenly it all made sense, the mobs, the ridicule, the shouts of Demon Brat, it suddenly all made sense and Naruto fell to the ground and started to weep. So that why everyone hates me, why I've always been alone, it's because I'm a demon. The Kyuubi snarled then said, Please you, a demon, don't make me laugh. You're about as much a demon as I am a harmless kitten. This made Naruto confused, so the why does everyone hate me? He said in a voice so sad that if it was anything other than Kyuubi it would have almost cried. In response Kyuubi snarled, Because they're all ignorant fools. The fact they could even think I would even consider try to inhabit the body of an impressionable child is insulting. The fearsome Kyuubi took over an innocent child. Yeah, that will earn me fear, said Kyuubi with sarcasm dripping from his words. He continued, Just because we're demons doesn't mean we don't have honor. We demons would never dream of stooping so low. Well, maybe Shikaku might, but he's a bit, how should I say it, I'm touched in the head. But I a demon with honor and strength and will fight no one who is not in their prime unless they challenge me to a duel, and even then I shall not accept if I feel they are unworthy. At this point Naruto felt the need to ask, then why did you attack the leaf 8 years ago? For those that don't remember, Naruto just turned 8. Kyuubi suddenly had a look of barely suppressed rage as Ha spoke. I never wanted to attack your miserable village. I was forced to by a man from that cursed clan, the Uchiha. At this the Kyuubi had an idea. Kid, I have an offer for you. Naruto looked at him confused and asked, what do you mean? Kyuubi responded, if you help me take revenge on the one who forced me to attack your village and forcing you to live your life alone, I will help you train your new abilities, given to you by your eyes. What do you say? At this Naruto looked down so that a shadow covered his eyes, then his face split with a menacing grin as he responded, give me the strength, and I will make sure he was never born. Kyuubi smiled menacingly, and replied, very good, but you are not yet ready. Find someone who can teach you the ways of shinobi. I will know when you are ready and I will communicate with you through a mental link. Now it's time for you to wake up. There is someone who wants to talk to you. At this Naruto felt himself gaining consciousness and set off to find a teacher. As Naruto woke up he put on his goggles to hide his eyes and set off in search of a sensei like Kyuubi had told him to. As he was walking he came to the realization, where the heck am I supposed to find a sensei? Kyuubi heard him and suggested that Naruto check one of the many training grounds located throughout the village. So Naruto headed towards a training ground at a convenient sign labeled Training Ground 7, completely oblivious to the figure secretly following him. As Naruto finally got to the training ground he was disappointed to find that there was no one there. He was about to turn around to head back and search for a new training ground when he heard a voice inside his head scream, Kid, move! When Naruto heard this he immediately jumped to the side as an enormous snake slithered past right where he had been. Silently thanking Kyuubi for helping him he noticed that the snake had turned around for a second go at him. Silently cursing his luck he kept dodging the snake, but each time just barely. After almost 20 minutes of dodging he was beginning to tire. As he attempted to dodge again he stumbled and fell to the ground as the snake was almost right on top of him. As the snake opened its mouth to eat Naruto a voice shout, that's enough, you may go home now. Once the voice said this the snake stopped, did something that looked like the snake was bowing, and then it disappeared into smoke. Naruto stood up and turned around to see the man that had helped him the other day. So naturally him being Naruto yelled at the man, hey, what's the big idea sending that big snake after me? At the child antics Orochimaru chuckled, Kukuku, forgive me Naruto-kun, I just wanted to test you to see strong you are, and I must say for an 8-year-old you did quite well. At this Naruto was confused. Test him? What did he mean by that? So Naruto decided to ask him just that. Hey, who are you anyways? And what do you mean by test me? He looked at Naruto and chuckled, Kukuku, Naruto-kun, I am Orochimaru, the legendary snake Sannin and member of the Densatsu no Sannin, and I was testing you to see if you're worthy of being my new apprentice. Naruto couldn't believe his luck. Not only did he find a sensei, but by the way this guy was talking and the aura of power that was around him he could tell that this man was also extremely powerful. But just to be safe, hey Kyuubi, you think this guy would make a good sensei? The Kyuubi figured since the kid had just started the academy that he wouldn't know the man. He said, yes, he would make an excellent sensei. There are few out there that would be able to train you better. After hearing the Kyuubi approve of this man he spoke up with his usual Naruto tone, really? Yada? I'm totally gonna be Hokage now that I've got an awesome sensei. Orochimaru's sweat dropped at the young boy's antics while thinking, I'm definitely gonna have to work on making him act more like a ninja. I've got a lot of work ahead of me. Ending his train of thought he decided to speak up and hopefully stop the horrendous dance that Naruto had started to do. Your training shall start today, so first of all stop that horrendous dance you're doing, much better, and second begin your physical work of 200 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 20 minutes of planks, 80 pull-ups, and 4 laps around the village. Then we shall begin your chakra control exercises. Since you have a lot of chakra it will be difficult, and the basics will take a while, but under by tutoring by the time you graduate the academy you shall be able to crush any genin, able to beat or be on par with most chunin, and be able to delay most jonin. Is that clear? Naruto stood straight as a board and shouted, yes sensei. Orochimaru chuckled to himself as he realized that making this boy his apprentice would be more entertaining than he originally thought. Time skipped to 10 years old. Naruto has been apprenticed to Orochimaru for 2 years and has begun learning about his ocular powers but has only learned Shinra Tensei, Almighty Push, Bansho Tenin, Universal Pull, how to absorb chakra, and the basics of Chibaku Tensei, Planetary Devastation, but hasn't mastered it yet, along with several Futon Ninjutsu, Daibakuha, Great Breakthrough, Wind Air Bullets, I don't know what it is in Japanese, and Air Wall Jutsus, has learned Shadow Snake Hands, and the Hibi Taijutsu style, plus is studying seals from scrolls that Jiraiya gives him when he is in the village. Orochimaru watched with pride as he saw Naruto finish his training for the day. He wanted to be sure he had enough energy left for the surprise he had planned for him later. He remembered when Naruto had found out about his Kusanagi blade, he had gone crazy begging to get a blade of his own, but Orochimaru always told him he wasn't ready. But Orochimaru had seen his growth in both strength and maturity in the 2 years Naruto had been learning from him. Orochimaru chuckled to himself as he remembered the day he made Naruto get rid of his horrendously ugly orange jumpsuit. The kid threw a fit but in the end relented and now wears a black t-shirt with a red Uzumaki spiral on the front with a black padded leather jacket that went down to his mid-thighs and had loose sleeves that were perfect for hiding his hidden blades and poison saban launcher. Along with the jacket he had black ANBU style pants along with his kunai holsters on his right thigh, shuriken holsters on his left. His sealing supplies were sealed into the right shoulder of his jacket, and his medic kit was sealed into the left shoulder. And to finish the look he had ANBU style plated gloves on each hand. In case you haven't noticed, black is my favorite color. Though Naruto had a ways to go before he graduated the academy, he felt he was ready to receive a blade of his own. Orochimaru called out to Naruto, "Naruto, come, I have something. I believe you are ready to take the next step as my apprentice. It is time for you to receive a blade like my Kusanagi." Naruto's eyes widened slightly and bowed slightly to his sensei and said, "Sensei, I am honored that you finally decided I was ready." After he said this, he felt excitement overwhelm him as his mood shifted dramatically, and he began to pester Orochimaru, "What kind of sword am I getting, sensei? Is it one like yours? Will it have the same abilities? Where is it? When will you begin to teach me the katas?" Orochimaru suddenly felt his eye begin to twitch, as he could have sworn Naruto had gotten past this stage of his life, but no matter, it was time to take him to the Dragon's Forge in the Land of Snakes. The very place where his sword the Kusanagi was crafted. So Orochimaru quieted Naruto with a simple rise of his hand, signaling him to stop because he needed to say something. "Naruto, getting your very own sword is not as simple as me handing you one. Especially one as special as a blade with quality on par with Kusanagi. First I shall take you to the home of the snake summons, where I shall take you to Dragon's Forge. From there you will proceed to make a large cut and press it on a special seal. The seal shall record your blood and chakra, so that channeling chakra into it will be far more effective than when using just normal chakra conductive metals. Along with you being the only one capable of wielding it without taking damage from it, it will have special abilities that no one would be able to predict." Naruto was getting more and more excited after each and every word. He hoped that his sword would have some awesome ability like being able to disintegrate his opponents, or some awesome like that. His thoughts were interrupted as a large snake about as tall as a full-grown golden retriever showed up in a plume of smoke. The snake spoke, "Lord Orochimaru, the preparations have been made. Are you and your apprentice ready?" Orochimaru looked at the summon and said, "Yes, reverse summon us so we may begin the ceremony." He then turned to look at Naruto. "Are you ready? The birth of your weapon will not be an easy one, and it could very easily be a month before you are back to full strength. I was unconscious for 3 full days, and then it was another 2.5 weeks before I was back to full strength." Without missing a beat, Naruto immediately responded, "If it means getting stronger, sensei, I would go through any trial this world can throw at me." Orochimaru chuckled at his apprentice's determination and decided to continue. "There is a chance that it shall not give you a weapon even after the hardships you shall go through. Enko tried to get a weapon, but even after all the effort she didn't receive anything. Are you willing to take the risk?" Naruto immediately responded with, "No risk is too great in the quest for obtaining power. It was one of the first things you pounded into my head, sensei." Orochimaru chuckled at hearing this and said, "You have learned well, my student. Now let us go so that you may take the next step in your quest for strength." And with that the two of them exploded into smoke, signifying that they were reverse summoned. Home of Snake Summons. I don't know what it's called. Naruto and Orochimaru appeared in a field of grass that was overlooked by a large mountain that if you looked closer you could see that it was actually a volcano. Naruto looked at Orochimaru and asked, "Sensei, where is this place where I'm getting my sword?" Orochimaru didn't respond immediately. Instead he pointed towards the volcano before saying, "It is in the heart of the volcano. But the fires are different than most volcanoes. The fires this one produces were originally set by the dragons of old. Rumor has it that one still exists in a chamber deep under the mountain, and he keeps the dragon forge burning with his great fire." Naruto was amazed, and hadn't realized how long he had been standing there until he saw Orochimaru start to walk toward the volcano, and had to jog shortly to catch up to him. As they approached the base of the volcano, Naruto saw the faint outline of a door on the side of the mountain. Curious, Naruto asked, "Hey sensei, is that a door?" Orochimaru looked at Naruto and nodded, saying, "Yes, I cannot go beyond this point. You must make a decent-sized cut across the palm of your hand. Then place your hand in the middle of the circle on the door, and you shall enter into the room of judgment." This was where Anko was rejected. It analyzes your blood, your character, your ancestry, and your past difficulties. If it deems you worthy, you shall be taken into the next room, but if you are rejected, you shall be quite forcefully removed. Do you wish to continue? Naruto just nodded and made a large gash on the palm of his hand and then stuck it in the middle of the circle. In a flash of light he vanished into the volcano. Inside the room of judgment, Naruto looked around as he saw the sudden change in scenery. He now appeared to be floating above a lake of magma as a dark figure with crimson slitted eyes stared at him. He knew whatever this being was, it was not Kyuubi. He continued to just stare into its eyes. Its gaze was a little unsettling, but he continued to just lock gazes with the enormous creature. Eventually, after what seemed like an eternity, the creature spoke in a deep and gravely voice, "You are chosen." After saying this, the creature faded from existence, and Naruto suddenly found himself in another room. The room was massive, and he seemed to be standing on some form of small island in the middle of an enormous lake of lava. Suddenly he seemed to lose temporary control of his body as he suddenly sat down in a meditation position. Suddenly he felt his chakra leaving him in large amounts, and seemed to be absorbed into the magma. Along with his normal chakra, he saw wisps of red Kyuubi chakra go along with it and absorbed into the magma. As this was happening, some of the lava had begun to float in midair and began to collect, forming in the shape of a katana. As Naruto felt the tug on his chakra and he saw the lava begin to solidify into a traditionally lengthened katana, while the handle guard looked like 9 golden foxtails that swirled together to look like the Uzumaki crest, and a cloth grip that looked like solid gold. The blade was the most magnificent shade of black that he had ever seen. It looked flawless with an edge that looked like it could cut through anything like paper, and on each side of the blade was a magnificent and detailed Chinese-style dragon that looked to be made of the purest gold. He suddenly realized in his hand he was holding a sheath that was the same color as the blade with the gold trim to it. The blade floated over to the sheath and sheathed itself before both reappeared strapped to his back. Then suddenly his vision faded to black. But before he faded completely he heard a deep gravely voice say, "I am Shinryu." As Naruto began to come to his senses, the first thing he noticed was a white ceiling and the smell of rubber gloves. Naruto groaned as he realized that he was in the hospital. He hated hospitals. They always made him stay longer than he needed to, their food was terrible, and worst of all they didn't serve ramen. To Naruto this was the biggest taboo in the world. To not have the noodly goodness that is ramen, to Naruto was a sin not even the most merciful being could forgive. As Naruto was pondering what method of escape he should use, the door opened, and in stepped Orochimaru. Without saying a word he tossed Shinryu at Naruto while it was still in its sheath. Naruto slowly drew the blade from its sheath. He gasped at how perfectly balanced it was. He stood up out of the hospital bed and swung it a couple of times, and when he accidentally cut through the bed railing, and he was amazed at how he felt almost no resistance. Orochimaru tossed a bundle of clothes at Naruto as he was only wearing a hospital gown. Then he stood up and walked out so Naruto could get dressed. After a couple minutes he walked back in and said, "You have been cleared to leave. We are going to training ground 44 and you will not leave until you have learned all you can about your new sword." Naruto nodded in understanding, and he finished putting on his hidden blades and strapped his sword to his back. 20 minutes later in the Forest of Death, Orochimaru led Naruto into the middle of a clearing in the middle of the Forest of Death. "Naruto," Orochimaru spoke, "in order to fully grasp the abilities of your sword you can't just sit down and meditate. In order to truly unlock a blade's true potential, these abilities must be discovered in the midst of battle. The Forest of Death is the best place for this, as the creatures are always trying to kill you but are not strong enough to do much harm. It is the perfect location for life or death combat training. You shall stay here in the Forest of Death for 1 month, but if you have not mastered the sword's abilities by then you will have to stay another 2 months, then another 4 months, and so on and so forth." Naruto nodded in understanding and said, "Yes, sensei, but how should I get started?" Orochimaru stated, "A good way to start is by channeling your chakra nature through the blade. Remember, this blade was created especially for you and will probably enhance some of your abilities. I shall be leaving now. Remember, you are not to leave training ground 44 until you have mastered your blade's abilities." Naruto nodded in understanding and then jumped off into the forest. 2 weeks later, Naruto was frustrated. 2 weeks and he still hadn't learned anything about his blade except that he could channel his wind chakra through it, and he could already do that with kunai and other weapons, so he felt like that didn't really count as an awesome special ability like his sensei said it would have. Naruto was angrily running through trees. He was so angry that he almost didn't sense the 4 chakra signatures that were nearby. He guessed that they couldn't be more than 50 meters away. Naruto decided to go investigate, hoping it might help him learn more about his blade. As he got to the clearing he saw what appeared to be Genin team and their sensei. But the other thing he noticed was that they weren't from Konoha. On their foreheads was not a leaf insignia but of the hidden village of the rock. He quietly crouched on a branch overhead of them and listened in on their conversation. One of the what appeared to be Genin spoke. "Ugh, I can't believe we got such a lame mission. I mean, what kind of mission is hunting down a bunch of wet behind the ears Genin, for a team of Chunin?" The Jonin spoke up. "Listen, you young fool, this is a mission of great importance that you should feel honored to have been chosen for. Your job is to first booby trap this forest so that it looks like Konoha is trying to gain an advantage over the other villages. And second is you 3 are to go and kill as many Konoha Genin as possible so to cripple their future forces, as there are a lot of Konoha teams participating." The Genin just sighed, stating, I know it's just killing a bunch of Genin sounds rather underhanded. I mean, I always thought our village was above such tactics, and that it was Konoha that did these things." The Jonin just shook his head. "Listen, in the ninja world there is no honor. You are expected to do anything in your power to complete a mission, even if it means killing an innocent person. That is our duty as ninja. There is no sugarcoating it, as to survive you must be willing to do the most deplorable acts imaginable. Do you understand?" The Genin just turned his head while looking disinterested, like he had heard that same story before. Right then they heard a snap. Up in the trees Naruto cursed as being so careless as to let himself be heard. Without given much time he found himself using his sword to block a kunai swipe from the Jonin. Naruto immediately jumped back away only to duck due to a kunai thrown by one of the Genin. Channeling wind chakra into his sword he cut through a tanto used by one of the IWA Genin and straight through his neck. Seeing their teammate go down they decided to try and double team him. As they got nearer they noticed that Naruto had begun doing seals. They were only about 2 feet away from him when he thrust his hands out shouting, "Futon! De Tapa!" The 2 Genin got shot away and were knocked unconscious when they crashed into a tree. Naruto was looking around for the Jonin as he had disappeared. Naruto knew the man hadn't ran away. IWA Jonin were too prideful to be beaten by a Konoha civilian. since he technically isn't a ninja yet as he hasn't graduated from the academy. As he expected, the Jonin appeared out of the ground and slammed his hands into the ground while shouting, Doton, Burakumonten no Noro, Curse of the Black Mountain. As he called out the name of the jutsu, massive spikes made from black earth rose from the ground to impale Naruto. Naruto knew he couldn't avoid it as it was too fast, so he poured as much chakra as he could into his attack and called out, Shinra Tensei, Almighty Push. As he said it, a massive surge of gravity occurred as the entire forest around him for about a half-mile was completely leveled. Think of what pain did to Konoha, just not as large of a scale. In the middle of it stood Naruto, panting slightly. Grinning to himself, he looked around to try and find the remains of the IWA Jonin. It would hopefully be his corpse. His hope was in vain as a spike of earth erupted from the ground and nearly pierced his chest. He managed to pull a substitution but still got a shallow wound on his left side. The rock Jonin appeared from out of the ground and saw that his earth spear had impaled a log. He looked around and thought, holy shit, if that attack had hit me I would have died. Who is this kid? He looked around and was happy that he had hidden in the ground. He spun around just in time to block the kid's sword with a kunai but had to jump back when he realized it was coated in wind chakra. Naruto was tired and slightly low on chakra from his last attack. He hoped that he could surprise the Jonin like he did the Genin/Chunin, but no such luck as he jumped backwards. Though Naruto was surprised when a blade of wind chakra shot out of the blade, much to the surprise of Naruto and the Jonin. Naruto smiled as he saw it cut into the Jonin but became disappointed as a puff of smoke revealed a log in his place. Naruto looked around to try and find the Jonin. As he was looking around, he detected a signature underneath him and jumped into the air, narrowly avoiding an uppercut from the Jonin. Channeling wind chakra into his blade again, he swung it, attempting to do the same thing he had done earlier in his battle. But instead, at the last minute, he felt the chakra shift from wind to something else, as a massive wave of fire erupted from the tip of his blade. The eyes of the Jonin widened in shock at seeing the massive firestorm. Naruto smiled as when it cleared he saw a clump of black remains. But before he could celebrate his victory, he saw the body crumble, signaling that it was a rock clone, and as he turned around, he saw a massive boulder the size of an average-sized building coming straight at him. At that second he felt his Shinra Tensei return, and he thrust out his sword, channeled his chakra through his sword and shouted Shinra Tensei. As he released his jutsu, instead of a wide-ranged attack like it usually was, it was narrow and focused, and when it made contact with the boulder it plowed right through it, shattering it into many pieces. The Jonin's eyes widened at the incoming attack, as it was the reason that he became Jonin, as his other skills were only about high Jonin. But that jutsu had never failed to defeat his opponents in the past. The attack coming too fast for him to avoid, and he had been so confident in his last attack he hadn't bothered to prepare a substitution in case. The attack hit him and went straight through his stomach, and he collapsed to the ground in a pool of blood. Naruto was still standing there looking at his sword in awe. When his sensei had said it would be made specifically for him, and him only, he didn't think it would be so custom-made for him that it would amplify his existing abilities to such a degree. But the only thing he didn't understand is where the fire came from. He had a wind affinity. Sure, he would eventually be able to control them all, but due to fire being strong against wind, Orochimaru had guessed that would be the last one he would get. Naruto decided he should go refine the abilities he had discovered so far so he could do it on demand, instead of on accident. So he was about to go and continue his training session, but he suddenly collapsed in exhaustion. As he was laying there, he both hoped and didn't hope his sword had too much more to unlock, or at the rate he was going he would be stuck here for a year. And he was really starting to miss ramen as his supply had ran out a couple days ago. 2.5 months later, Naruto ended up having to stay a total of 3 months to finish mastering his blade. He had discovered that not just Shinra Tensei but all his Rinnegan abilities were enhanced by it. By putting it near or clashing blades with someone, he could drain their chakra. By swiping it through jutsu, he could take the chakra out of the ability. By focusing Shinra Tensei and Bansho Tenin, Universal Pull, the powers would be magnified and focused. He had learned how to summon the fire at will, and the part he thought was the coolest was that he didn't need hand signs to do it. He perfected his wind slash, which he named Fuji no Ha, Blade of the Wind God. He also learned that if he ever lost it, he could summon it back to his sheet at will. Using Bansho Tenin could bring it back to his hand. And using the Minor Snake Contract, where he can't summon big snakes, just smaller ones like the ones used in Shadow Snake hands, he can have his snakes poison the blade, making a scratch into a fatal wound. But what Naruto was still curious about was where the fire was coming from. He learned he could make the fire much bigger by sending his wind chakra into it, but if used without the wind it required no chakra. This fact still puzzled Naruto. He stopped his thoughts as he neared the northmost gate of the Forest of Death. He saw a snake curled up by the entrance. Seeing it, he knew his sensei summoned it to watch the gate while he did other important things. He probably went out drinking with Jiraiya again. Maybe Jiraiya would give him some more scrolls on sealing, as he had just finished the last ones before he went into this Forsaken Forest. Rattling the gate a little bit to get the snake's attention, the snake looked up, then slithered over and through the chain link fence, and opened his mouth impossibly wide, and Naruto climbed in. Think Jiraiya and the toads he climbed in and out of when he infiltrated Amigakure. After sitting inside the snake for about 15 minutes, he saw the snake open his mouth and he climbed out. Naruto looked around to take in his surroundings and saw that he was, as predicted, he found himself in the shinobi bar, the dull kunai. In front of him he saw Orochimaru and Jiraiya talking while drinking a particularly strong brand of sake. Naruto cleared his throat to get their attention. The two turned around in their bar stools to look at him. Orochimaru looked at him and noticed that Naruto's clothes were torn a little bit. Naruto, do I have to up your training if the forest creatures were enough to injure you? Naruto looked at Orochimaru and shook his head vigorously and responded, No sensei. I fought an IWA Jonin and 3 Chunin in the forest who were there to try and sabotage the second round of the Chunin exams. Orochimaru and Jiraiya looked at the kid and their eyes widened in shock. Jiraiya knew that since the war, IWA was forced to promote some people to Jonin that weren't strong enough to be, just to keep up their appearance of strength, but still. Orochimaru looked at Naruto and asked, What happened to the IWA needs? Naruto looked at his sensei and responded, I decapitated one of the Chunin, the other 2 I knocked out but later died due to an empowered Shinra Tensei. Orochimaru nodded his head knowing how deadly that technique was, and signaled for him to continue. Naruto continued, and when I was fighting the Jonin I unlocked 3 of my sword's abilities. First I discovered was that it is capable of releasing a large blade of wind that can cut through most objects. Second, it is capable of releasing a large amount of fire without requiring chakra and only gets bigger when I channel my wind chakra into the attack. And I killed him with the third ability as I can focus my Shinra Tensei through it to focus it and cause more damage. Using the third ability I launched it to stop his final attack, but after it shattered his attack it kept going and blasted a massive hole through his stomach. I only won through luck. If he had avoided my last attack I would probably be dead right now. Orochimaru and Jiraiya were stunned at what this sword could do. Though both were wondering how the sword could produce fire without the application of chakra. Voicing their curiosity, Orochimaru spoke, Naruto, do you know how the sword creates this fire? Naruto shook his head, No, but I do have a theory. When I use the fire the dragons on the side of the blade turn red, and when the fire comes out it looks almost as if the fire is coming from their mouths. I'm not sure if that helps any, but it's all that I've come up with. Orochimaru nodded. He would have to talk with the snakes about it, but that would have to wait. As of right now he needed to train Naruto to properly use his sword in opposed to using revised kunai styles. Naruto, it's time for you to learn how to properly use your sword. Meet me at Training Ground 18 tomorrow at 0600 hours, 6 o'clock. Naruto nodded in understanding. He decided he'd go to Ichiraku and get some ramen, then head home to sleep in his own bed again. Naruto got to the training ground that he usually met his sensei at. When he got there he saw his sensei standing in the clearing along with the Hokage. Naruto looked to the two people and respectfully bowed while asking, Sensei, why is Hokage Ajisen here? The Sarutobi decided to speak first. Naruto, you shall be attending the last year of the academy, so that you can find people that you can be placed in a team with, and so you can make some friends your own age, because right now none of the active shinobi would take you seriously. Naruto looked at the Hokage and said, But Ajisen I dash. Orochimaru decided it was time for him to jump into the conversation. Naruto, though you are capable of joining the shinobi force as you are, it is a matter of protocol, plus the council would throw a fit and probably have you removed from the ranks, right after being accepted. By going through the academy and passing like the other students, it ensures that the council can't have you removed from the ranks no matter how much they may dislike you, the civilian half anyway. Naruto nodded in understanding as he knew that they didn't like him very much and would throw a fit when he became an official ninja. Naruto looked at his sensei and the old Hokage and asked, When is my first day? The Sandaime looked at the young ninja and told him, In 1 month you shall begin the academy. You are quite ahead of what they are doing, so please don't show off or injure your classmates. Naruto looked at the old man and responded, Don't worry, Gigi, deception is the #1 tool of a ninja. I would have to be an orange-clad fool to show off everything I can do. Orochimaru looked down at his apprentice with pride that he had taken the lessons to heart and was applying them to his life. Time skip 1 month later / first day of the academy. Naruto was walking through the hallways on the way to the room he was told to attend. As he reached the room he knocked on the door. He heard a voice tell him it was okay to enter. When he walked in he saw many eyes staring at him curiously. He walked up to the teacher and handed him the slip that the Hokage had given him to give to the teacher. Iruka looked over the piece of paper and nodded as he had been told beforehand. He looked up from the sheet and spoke to the class. Class, we are getting a new student joining us for the last year of the academy. At this there were several cries of protest, which were immediately silenced by Iruka, who used his giant head technique. At this the whole class became deathly silent and Iruka continued, He gets to skip the first 3 years because he is an apprentice to one of our active shinobi. At this Naruto chuckled as he thought, Orochimaru sensei is way above your average shinobi, but said nothing as Iruka continued, I expect you all to treat him well and to not try to pick on him, am I understood? Yes, Iruka sensei, the class responded. Iruka nodded and continued, Okay, now we are going to go to the training room to see your taijutsu skills and how they have improved over the summer. When they got to the dojo, Iruka began calling up names for people to fight. First was a pink-haired girl named Sakura. His immediate thought of her was useless and probably a fangirl, and a Hyuga girl named Hinata who was very timid but felt she could improve greatly if she could gain some confidence. When they got up, the discolored-haired girl immediately yelled out, I'll win this for you, Sasuke-kun. Naruto shook his head as his assumption was confirmed and that the standards had fallen so low that a fangirl could get this far in the academy. When the teacher told them they could start, Naruto slapped himself in forehead when he saw Sakura's stance, or lack of it. Her guard was so wide Panda could fit through it with space to spare, and the way she went about attacking her opponent was disgraceful since she just charged without even taking a moment to analyze her enemy. Who outright charges a Hyuga in a taijutsu battle, thought Naruto. It was no wonder the Hyuga girl took her down in just a few seconds. The teacher proceeded to call names until he reached the last two people. Uchiha Sasuke and Uzumaki Naruto, please come take your positions. After saying this, every guy in the room flinched as every girl, except Hinata, simultaneously squealed. After they got their hearing back, they took their positions. Sasuke decided to taunt his opponent a bit. You should give up, no one can defeat an Uchiha. 1. Naruto just took his stance, ignoring the arrogant remarks. And after a moment, Iruka began the fight. They could hear the screaming of the rabid fangirls cheering on their idol. They both just stood there a moment, each looking the opponent over. Then Sasuke charged. Naruto could tell that he was good, judging by his form and speed. But he hadn't been trained by a Sannin. Right when Sasuke thought he was going to connect and end it with one punch, Naruto seemingly vanished and reappeared behind him and kicked him in the back, sending him sprawling along the ground in the arena. Sasuke growled while his cheer squad screamed his praises. He charged at Naruto again with a punch which was caught by Naruto. He then attempted to punch with his free fist, only to find a knee driven into his solar plexus, forcing the air from his lungs and sending him sprawling and gasping for breath. Everyone was astonished. No one had ever beaten Sasuke before, and Naruto had just done it almost without trying. Sasuke stood up angry and immediately charged Naruto again. Iruka yelled for him to stop, but he kept going. When he got to Naruto, Sasuke thought that he had taken Naruto by surprise when he suddenly found himself swinging at nothing but air. Sasuke and all of his fangirls glared at him, and the girls began yelling how he cheated or how Sasuke must have let him win. Iruka, who was irritated at the blatant obsession and worship of the fangirls, marched up to Sasuke. He grabbed Sasuke by his shoulder and told him, "Sasuke, tell your little group to shut up, as he won, and I can assure all of you he did not cheat." Sasuke scoffed at him and stated with his usual Uchiha-level superiority complex. Iruka sighed but turned back to the class, and they finished up the taijutsu spar. Meanwhile, Naruto was just standing with a blank expression on his face, watching the whole thing play out. After Iruka made Sasuke apologize for his actions to Naruto and the rest of his peers, they went back to the classroom for a lecture. After a couple of hours, lecture was done, and they were told they could go home. Naruto went to one of the training grounds to train by himself, as his sensei had just left for an important mission, so he wouldn't be back for a while. When Naruto had finished his warm-up and began training to increase his ease with his sword, he realized that ever since he got his sword he hadn't been contacted by the Kyuubi for more training in his Rinnegan. So he sat down and decided to meditate, which is what he did when he wanted to see Kyuubi without the fox calling him into his subconscious. When he finally got into his mindscape, which was unusually difficult, he walked through the various hallways until finally making it to the large sewer-like prison that contained the Kyuubi. When he approached the cell, he didn't see or hear anything, which was suspicious, as the Kyuubi was not known for being shy. Since he wasn't stupid, he stopped a good distance from the cell bars and called out to the demon. But he didn't get a response, so he willed for a palm-sized rock to appear in his hand. 2. He threw it through the bars with the skill that only shinobi have. It flew straight until it hit something and hit the ground. Naruto then heard a growl and then a really loud yawn, then some shuffling that sounded like it was coming towards him. Naruto saw a vulpine snout, then 2 red eyes come out of the blackness and stared at him with a kind of drowsy look. The Kyuubi then yawned again, then looked at Naruto. "Kid, you better have a good reason for waking me up, or seal or no seal, I'm going to eat you." Naruto began to sweat a little bit before answering. Well, you hadn't contacted me for a long time, so I was getting curious to where you were, since I haven't heard from you in about a year, so dash. Naruto was cut when the Kyuubi began to yell. "What? I've been asleep for a year." What could have caused the large demon stopped mid-rant when he remembered. That sword, that damn thing drained so much of my power when it was being created. I felt weaker than the Ichibi. I went to sleep to regain my power. Right now I'm up around the level of the 7 tails, but why on earth did it demand so much power? The Kyuubi thought about it for a minute before speaking. "Did anything unusual happen when the sword was being forged, and what does it do?" asked the Kyuubi. After a brief explanation on the abilities, Kyuubi was stunned at the abilities of the blade. The blade itself was stronger than any of the blades of the 7 swordsmen of the mist. The Kyuubi was stunned at the potential the blade gave his container. After some thought on what he was going to do, he decided, "Kid, I'm going to re-establish our mental link, since the one previously was lost after the forging of the sword, and after I am going to give you some chakra, since I believe that when it was being forged it also took my chakra and it was absorbed into the blade, so when using my demon chakra, there should be some kind of reaction." After the demon finished, Naruto found himself back outside his mind. A few seconds later he felt the demon chakra filling his coils. His Rinnegan turned from a pale purple to a fiery red, and the tiny pupil in the middle turned into a slit that extended from the top of his eye to the bottom. His canines lengthened, his hair turned even more spiky, and his whisker marks thickened. He looked behind him and saw a tail of chakra waving behind him. But he realized that he wasn't feeling the familiar feeling of hatred and rage that he had felt the few times before when using the chakra. He pulled out his sword to see if it had reacted to his chakra. When he pulled it out and looked at it, he saw that the golden dragons that had been along the side had changed to burning red foxes and that the whole blade was covered in the demon chakra. He decided he should try his flaming sword attack, 3, to see if anything changed. When he swung his sword and willed the wave of fire to come out, he got more than he had thought possible. Instead of a wall of flames, and was more of a tsunami that completely incinerated anything in its path. It kept going, then dispersed around 20 meters in front of him. For Naruto could only whistle at the destruction it caused. When he heard the familiar voice of the Kyuubi in his head. "How do you feel?" Naruto replied, strangely calm. "I don't feel the normal feelings of hatred and rage that usually come with using your chakra. I feel like I usually do, calm and collected." The Kyuubi was silent for a moment before speaking up. "The sword must enhance your body and suppress the corruption my chakra causes. I will give you more chakra and tell me when you begin to feel the negative effects." Upon Kyuubi finishing his statement, Naruto felt even more chakra fill through his body. At 2 tails he started feeling like he wanted to punch someone or start a fight, but it was slight and easy to suppress. At the beginning of 3 tails the urge was greater. When he was at 3 and about to form a 4th is when he mentally yelled, "Stop!" He immediately felt the chakra stop coming, but the 3 tails remained. 5. Very good, no training at all, and already almost at 4 tails. That right there is something that no Jinchuriki before can say they accomplished. Well, for the ones that could even reach 4 tails. But very good, even though the swords helps you still, it's a great start. After his discussion with Kyuubi, Naruto decided to turn in early that day, since even though he wasn't all that physically tired, the mental strain he had was quite large that day, and didn't feel like doing anything tiring that day. Time skip day before graduations. The Hokage was sitting in front of his Jonin to see who was going to take on a Genin team. There were many elites in front of him. Among some of them were Sharingan no Kakashi, Asuma Sarutobi, and the Genjutsu mistress Kurenai. He decided that everyone who was going to show up was there, and decided to begin the team selections. As he was about to call the first Jonin forward to assign their team, a black blur burst through the open window. It stopped right in front of the Hokage and unfurled, revealing Orochimaru. The Hokage sighed as he said, "Well, at least I know who Anko learned how to make her entrances from. And what is it with you Sanins and your entrances? It's you with your bursting through windows, Jiraiya with his kabuki dance, and Tsunade with her blasting the doors off their hinges. Can't any of you enter like normal people?" He sighed. Orochimaru chuckled at his sensei's reaction to his entrance when he noticed the strange looks he was getting from the people in the room, so he decided he would announce his reasons for showing up. He suddenly took a very professional posture and stated, "Sensei, I would like to request a genin." Needless to say, everyone including the Hokage was quite shocked. This was because of the horrible fate that befell his last team many years ago. He had sworn never to take on another genin team, which was why Anko was never a part of one and was only his apprentice and filled in occasionally on missions, but never had an actual team. The Hokage, being curious about his prized pupil's sudden change of heart, spoke up. "Orochimaru, not that I'm not happy about your sudden change of heart about taking a team, but my curiosity demands I ask why." The snake Sannin chuckled as he had expected this response from his old sensei. Decided to answer, "I merely saw 2 genin besides my apprentice who I believe could become quite powerful after an attitude adjustment." This suddenly made everyone curious on who he could be talking about. The Hokage then spoke up, "Well, Orochimaru, who is it you wish to select for your genin team?" After a long suspenseful pause, Orochimaru finally spoke, "I would like to request Uzumaki Naruto, Uchiha Sasuke, and Hinata Hyuga." His request was followed by cries of protest from the other Jonin senseis who were complaining about an unbalanced team, among other things, such as Kurenai, who wanted Hinata for her team. The aged leader then silenced everyone, then proceeded to speak. "Orochimaru, why did you choose these 3? If it is just because those 3 you like, I cannot condone it." Orochimaru chuckled and gave his answer. "Sensei, I would not select for such a frivolous manner," he said as he glanced at red-eyed Kurenai, who he knew was going to select Hinata due to her relationship with her in the past. He then continued, "I chose them because it would create a devastatingly balanced team. Hinata with her gentle fist, which is such a devastating style, will be the close range. Sasuke with his Sharingan and his Genjutsu and techniques he can copy will make a formidable long to mid-range fighter who can also fight close if he has to. Then add Naruto with his destructive Rinnegan Jutsu, high chakra reserves, and his already high skill in Kenjutsu makes a deadly mid-range fighter. Combine these 3 and their selective Dojutsu, and they make a team that could eventually rival the Sannin." The Hokage's eyes widened at this revelation, realizing how right his student was, and that they nearly broke up a team that had so much potential. The whole room was quiet, with several Jonin wanting to argue, Kurenai, but could not find fault in the Sannin's logic. The Hokage decided that they should move on so that everyone would not stand around all day trying to come up with an argument to the Sannin's team. Hiruzen then coughed loudly, bringing everyone's eyes on him. "Well," he started, "now that we have one team out of the way, we can keep going with the selections." As he looked around the room, noticing Kakashi had vanished since the one he wanted to train, Naruto, and the one he felt he needed to train, Sasuke, were both taken, he probably figured he didn't need to be there anymore. The chain smoker Asuma was first to come out of their dazed expressions and stated, "I would like to request Nara Shikamaru, Akimichi Choji, and Yamanaka Ino for my team. It worked with their dads, why not them too?" The Hokage nodded in approval and gestured for the next to come up. Kurenai decided to speak next and said, I would like Inuzuka Kiba, Abirame Shino, and Haruno Sakura. I feel a tracking and support base team will be what they'll be best at. The Hokage nodded and gestured for the next sensei. The next few minutes were with the rest of the senseis choosing their teams. Once it was all over, they all went out to prepare the training fields for each of their selective team's second genin test. The next day had all our favorite future genin were sitting there all proud of themselves for passing the genin exam the day prior, and all had their headbands proudly tied on their foreheads, biceps, belts, etc. Iruka then walked into the classroom and quickly silenced everyone with his giant head jutsu and began to call off teams. Team 7 is Uchiha Sasuke. At this, every girl that had not yet been chosen, again other than Hinata, was sitting on the edge of their seats waiting to hear the next two results. Uzumaki Naruto. When he said this, Hinata began to silently pray to Kami that her name would be called to be placed on her crush's team. She was so busy praying with her fingers crossed that she almost didn't hear Iruka call out the final name. Hinata Hyuga, and you sensei shall be Orochimaru of the Sannin. When he said this, there was a large outcry of what? In the room where all the fangirls screamed at not having been placed on their precious Sasuke-kun's team, while Hinata was silently thanking whatever deity that had decided to listen to her pleas. Naruto was quite happy that a fangirl wasn't placed on the same team as him, but he didn't know too much about Hinata other than was quite shy and would turn quite red and stutter a lot when he tried to talk to her, which he found kind of strange, and would often ask if she was sick and feel her forehead only for her to pass out. 6. Sasuke, on the other hand, was mentally cheering yes. No fangirls. And since both possess bloodlines themselves, and while I'm jealous of Naruto's power, at least I won't have teammates who will just slow me down, and having a Sannin as a sensei should give me enough power to defeat him. Iruka was quick to regain order in his classroom and proceeded to read of the rest of the team's teammates shall be Inuzuka Kiba, Abirame Shino, and Haruno Sakura. Your sensei shall be Kurenai Yuhi. There were two loud thuds as Kiba's and Sakura's heads hit their desks, as they liked each other at all, Kiba not liking Sakura since she heard his and Akamaru's sensitive ears, and Sakura not liking Kiba since she thinks she smells like wet dog and kibbles. Iruka then continued, and since Team 9 is still in circulation from last year, Team 10 is Naro Shikamaru, Akimichi Choji, and Yamanaka Ino. It has been a pleasure to teach each and every one of you. Your new senseis will be here to pick you up soon. Everyone was patiently waiting as senseis came and got their students. Then a black object burst through the window, shattering it, and landing in the middle of the classroom. It unfurled to show a man with long black hair, snake-like eyes, and lanky but agile-looking form. Naruto just rolled his eyes at his sensei's over-the-top entrance. Orochimaru looked around and announced, Team 7, meet me on the top of the building in 5 minutes, or you'll be finding snakes in your bed for the next month. After he said this, he dissolved into snakes which then slithered out the door. Naruto just rolled his eyes at his sensei and vanished in a leaf shunshin. When Hinata and Sasuke got to the roof, they found Naruto and their new sensei sitting there quietly waiting for them to show up. When they sat, Orochimaru spoke up, Alright, let's introduce ourselves. Likes, dislikes, hobbies, dreams for the future. I'll go first. I like snakes and training. I don't like sour things and the smut my teammate takes part in and writes. I like learning new jutsu, and my dream is to find a way to become immortal. Okay, Pale Eyes, your turn. Hinata looked a bit nervous but answered anyway. And my name is Hyuga Hinata. I like flowers, cinnamon rolls, and she blushed while subtly glancing at her blonde teammate, then continued. I don't like my F family's cage B bird seal, and my D dream is T to unite the T2 branches. Orochimaru then looked at Sasuke then said, You next, broody? Scowling at the nickname, he began, nonetheless, my name's Uchiha Sasuke. I don't like many things, and I dislike a lot of things. My hobbies are training, and my dream. No, I won't call it a dream, it's more of an ambition, cause it will happen. I will kill a certain someone and bring back my clan. Orochimaru then, though over his two new students, I have an Avenger and a Shy Hyuga. Hopefully it won't take too long to turn their personalities around, but now to hear my apprentice's intro. He then turned and nodded to his apprentice, telling him to go ahead. He began, my name is Uzumaki Naruto. I like ramen, training, and my sword. I don't like people who judge others without first getting to know them and the time it takes to cook ramen. My hobbies are learning more about my bloodline and swords, watering my plants, and trying new flavors of ramen. 7. My dream is to become the most powerful shinobi in the elemental nations. Orochimaru nodded in approval of his new students, then spoke. All right, meet me at Training Ground 7 tomorrow at 8 for your real genin exam. They all looked at him curiously, then Hinata spoke. But Sensei we already took the genin E exam. He chuckled before saying, if you thought using such pathetic E-rank ninjutsu and a written test was all it took to become ninja, we would have a lot more genin deaths than we already have. Anyone could pass that exam. That test is just to figure out who is absolutely hopeless. This next test has a 66% fail rate, meaning of the 9 teams that were made, only 3 will enter active duty. The others will be sent back to the academy for another year of training, or if their sensei sees fit, dropped from the shinobi program entirely. The 3 doujutsu-wielding kids all looked at their sensei in shock, and Naruto with a bit of frustration, since this was the first he was hearing of this. At this, the snake Sannin vanished in a shunshin, leaving 3 conflicted kids on the roof. The new Team 7 can now be found sitting under a tree waiting for their sensei to show up. They didn't have to wait long since in puff of smoke their snake-like sensei arrived. Alright Gakis, for your genin test you have to steal these bells from me. Whoever doesn't get a bell will be tied to that post. As he gestures to 3 posts all stuck into the ground, and will be promptly sent back to the academy for another year of training. As he held up 2 bells. 1. They looked at him curiously, all noticing the lack of a third bell, but it was surprisingly the Prince Brooder Sasuke himself who decided to voice the team's thoughts. But sensei, there are only 2 bells, where's the third one? The pale Sannin chuckled and responded with, well, I do seem to have only 2 bells. It seems one of you is going back to the academy regardless. Kukuku. They all had a look of astonishment on their faces, but if one looked closely you could see a glint in the eye of a particular dense spiky blonde-haired genin who realized he already knew the secret to this test. A few moments later Orochimaru set a timer on a stump and then spoke, you have till noon to take these bells from me, as he tied them to a belt loop on his pants. Now go. Mere seconds after he gave them the okay to go they were completely out of sight, and a lesser ninja would have lost them entirely, but he wasn't a Sannin for nothing, as his sensing abilities were rather skilled. Even for not being a sensor-type shinobi he could detect his apprentice's strong chakra signal moving towards the other 2 smaller ones, who were hiding. He mentally cursed as he wondered how he figured out the meaning so quickly. He then mentally cursed, damn you Jiraiya, you must have told him the story of when we took this same test. Damn it. But he had already began the test, and he knew he wasn't allowed to change it, but after thinking back on it he realized they would have passed anyway probably, so he'd let it slide, but he'd make sure to have a few choice words with Jiraiya the next time he saw him. With Naruto, he ran through the woods looking for Hinata, who he knew would be the easiest to convince to team up, and he could only hope that the 2 of them could get through the Uchiha's thick skull to get him to understand the only way they are going to pass is to work together. He dropped behind her, and tapped her on the shoulder only to have to avoid a Juken strike, but when she saw who it was immediately blushed, and stuttered out an apology. He waved his hands in dismissal, knowing she probably felt bad, and then spoke, Hinata, we need to work together in order to pass. As he said those words Hinata began creating a new color of red on her face with how much she was blushing. He needs me, she thought excitedly. As Naruto continued, my godfather Jiraiya had this same test when he was a genin, and he told me the only way to pass is to work as a team. When she heard this Hinata deflated a little bit but was still happy that Naruto came to her first. They then dashed off to find Sasuke and hope that they'll be able to get through his thick ego. They found Sasuke quickly with help from Hinata's Byakugan. They found him hiding in a tree near a clearing where their sensei was just sitting there meditating. Naruto tapped him on the shoulder only to have to bend backwards at an angle that for a normal person would be considered impossible. When Sasuke saw who it was he put his kunai away and asked gruffly, what are you 2 doing here? I don't need your help to get a bell. Naruto sighed expecting this but proceeded to tell Sasuke, we need to work together to pass. The 2 bells are a trick to split us up. This is the same test that sensei and his teammates had back when they were and my godfather Ero Sannin told me stories of when they took the test and how they discovered the secret to passing, and it was to work as a team and later became famous ninja known for their incredible skill and teamwork. Sasuke absorbed the information and decided to weigh his odds and decided that his odds against the Sannin alone was pretty slim. Even people with a god complex admit that fighting any of the Sannin is no easy feat, especially one known to be the strongest of the 3. He nodded and gestured for Naruto to continue. Naruto obliged and said, okay hey race, what we're going to do. Back with Orochimaru. Orochimaru was just sitting in the clearing meditating while waiting for his new students to make the first move. It had been a while and they still hadn't made their move. While most new teachers would then get up and start looking for them, he just smiled knowing that taking longer but being more efficient is better than going fast and having a possible error. Orochimaru knew that even if Naruto hadn't already known what the test was about would have been able to figure it out quite easily, but that still didn't mean he was any less cross at his peeking teammate any less. He was then interrupted from his thoughts, as he found kunai coming at him from 3 different directions. 3 blurs then launched from the different points around the forest, and attempted to assault him. He had to be very careful of his pale-eyed student since even a tap from her could do serious damage. He then noticed Sasuke jump back and start going through hand seals, then said, Katan, Great Fireball Jutsu. As he finished the name of his technique, a medium-sized ball of fire came from his mouth and rushed at Orochimaru. He noticed that his 2 other students had substituted away, leaving logs with exploding tags in their place. Orochimaru realized that they had planned this maneuver and executed it perfectly as he did a quick shunshin away from the colliding balls of destruction. The 3 genin hopefuls then jumped from where they were to each other. Did we get him? Asked Hinata. Naruto responded, I seriously doubt it. Sensei is a Sannin, you know he wouldn't let something like that hit him. But that leaves the question, where is he? As he said that, snakes shot from the trees faster than they could follow and proceeded to wrap up Sasuke and Hinata while Naruto was just barely able to blow them away with a Shinra Tensei. He had just drawn his sword to cut his teammates loose when he suddenly noticed a glint of steel out of the corner of his eye and quickly spun around and clashed blades with his sensei. The older and more experienced shinobi won and Naruto had to jump back. He knew his sensei was holding back a lot or else he would be dead and never would have had time to see the glint of his sword's blade. He jumped away while doing some hand seals, then spun and launched the attack at his 2 tied-up teammates and yelled, Futon, Wind Cutter. He didn't put near as much chakra into it as he normally would have, but he was trying to save his friends, not turn them into deli meat, so he only put enough chakra in the attack to hurt the snakes so they would release them by forcing them to return to their home. Orochimaru looked at his apprentice, and smiled in pride as he could tell he had taken his teachings and the teachings of all the past Hokages to heart. As he was thinking this, he heard the timer he had set go off, as the three young children sat in front of them and asked them, "Although I assume Naruto already told you the meaning of this test, I'm going to ask anyways, do you know what the secret to passing the belt test is?" Sasuke decided to answer. "Teamwork," he answered, since he had thought more about it as they had been going through. "The point of the bells was to separate us, and try to make us compete for them, but the way you pass is seeing beyond that, and working together." Orochimaru smiled as he could already see a change in Sasuke's behavior. He looked over at his other two bloodline-holding students, and saw determination to do well shining in their uniquely colored eyes. He knew they were going to become a team to rival any other and perhaps take the banister as the next three legendary ninja. Later that day, Sasuke was returning back to his compound after his passing his second genin test. He was happy and also strangely happy with his team. When he first heard they would be placed on teams, he had thought that teammates would only slow him down. But he was noticing that they were actually helping him do better. The plan of attack they had thought of during the test was something that he wouldn't have been able to come up with alone. And when Orochimaru had tied him and Hinata up with snakes, it was Naruto who freed them, and he was shocked to realize it felt nice knowing you had people there you could trust to watch your back. As he got closer to his compound, the thought crossed his mind that he never thought he would ever in a million years think, maybe they could help me deal with him. Later that day, Hinata, she walked home timidly, walking through the gates and past the branch member guards. She then approached the main building where the clan head and his family live, and she entered the building and was about to head towards the gardens in the back when she heard a stern voice behind her. "Hinata," her father called out, "come here at once, I must talk with you." She quietly made her way over to her father's nearby office and took a seat on one of the large and comfortable chairs that were in front of his desk for when there were important visitors over. She squirmed slightly under his intense stare until he finally spoke. "So I hear that you passed your second genin test, is this true?" he asked. "Why yes, Sama, it is," she answered. He responded, "Good, be sure you do not do anything to dirty our clan's reputation. Orochimaru is a powerful shinobi, be sure to learn from him well." "Hinata, Sama," she responded. He nodded to her and dismissed her. She nodded and left the room quietly. With Naruto decided to just go back to his apartment. Having nothing else to do, he went home and made himself a quick dinner of some leftover sushi he had in his fridge from the other day. Afterwards he went to sleep early so that he would have more energy for the next day's team training. Once he fell asleep, he found himself in front of a similar cage, groaning since he didn't want to talk to Fuzzy Wuzzy and just wanted to rest. So he yelled, "Yo Fuzzball, why'd you call me here? I'm trying to sleep." He saw the Kyuubi come into view before he spoke. "I thought you wanted to know more about your Rinnegan, but I guess I was wrong. Goodbye then." Naruto's eyes widened at this and immediately called out, Wait, I do want to learn more." The Kyuubi chuckled before speaking. "I thought you might have a change in heart. As I was saying, you currently possess 3 of the 6 main paths of the Rinnegan. The first one you unlocked was the Deva path, which allows you to use your gravity techniques. Next you unlocked your animal path, which allows you to summon all forms of creatures and animals. And last you have unlocked the Preta path, which allows you to absorb an infinite amount of chakra. The next one I believe you will develop is called the Azura path, which allows the user to summon mechanized armor to enhance them in battle and allows you to augment your body with extra limbs and various robotic weaponry. 2. I shall not reveal to you the others just yet, as you are not even close to unlocking them. The last 2 are quite difficult." Naruto groaned in disappointment, wanting to everything he could about his bloodline, but he knew the Kyuubi wouldn't budge since it never had in the past. After their talk, the Kyuubi let Naruto's mind go to Slumberland. We find our heroes hiding out in various trees scattered around a clearing. They have their chakra signatures suppressed so that their target couldn't detect them. When suddenly their wireless communicators blazed to life. "This is Ring, I am in position, there is no sign of the target, over," said our favorite blonde-haired shinobi. "T, this is Tenchi, I also can't see the T target." The Hyuga heiress blushed since her nickname was Angel. "This is Raven, I have a visual on the target requesting permission to engage," requested Sasuke. "Raven, this is Snake, begin your assault. Ring, I and Tenchi are moving to support you." Sasuke nodded in his tree and dropped down in front of the target. When it saw the raven-haired Avenger, the target immediately shot off in the other direction. But before it got far, Hinata dropped down in front of them. The target was quivering, but as Sasuke got close, suddenly lashed out, scratching him deeply across his face, and quickly ran around him. The target thought they were in the clear when he felt a force pull him back and saw their blonde-haired teammate with his arm outstretched towards him. Naruto caught the beast by the scruff on its neck so that the little demon couldn't turn him into deli meat like it did to his raven-haired teammate's face. Their sensei suddenly dropped down and turned to the blonde. "Is it the target?" Naruto took a close look at the feline in his hand before turning to his sensei. "Red bow in the left ear, this is definitely Tora." A little while later they were standing in the Hokage's office with the demon cat firmly in Naruto clutches. They then handed it to the daimyo's wife, who proceeded to pull the cat into a bone-crushing hug. Everyone felt kind of sorry for the abused feline. Well, Everyone except for Sasuke, who was chuckling after seeing the cat's insides turn to paste since it had mutilated his face. After the large woman had left with the little devil, cat in her arms, Team 7 turned back to the Hokage. Sarutobi then looked back at the team who was still standing there expecting another mission. He picked up a stack of papers on his desk and started shifting through them before he pulled out a folder that said D rank on them. He then looked into the folder before turning back to the young genin and Sannin standing in front of him. Let's see, we have a few gardening missions. An old lady needs you to pick up some groceries for her, and let's see. Suddenly there was a loud crash and a shout of, Tora, no, come back. Everyone in the room sweat dropped as they heard this as the aged Hokage continued to speak. Or you can catch Tora again. Naruto, whose eye had been twitching the whole time, suddenly yelled out, and oh. No more chores. Those aren't missions that shinobi are needed for. Civilians could do those jobs. Old man, give us something better. Hiruzen looked at the young Uzumaki's teammates, who he saw nod in agreement. Orochimaru sighed as his apprentice could still be quite expressive despite all the emotional conditioning that Orochimaru had put him through. Sarutobi sighed before shouting, you can come in now. As he said this, an aged man came through the door. The Hokage continued, Team 7, this is your mission. You must escort Tazuna here back to his home and protect him as he finishes building his bridge. The old man, now revealed to be Tazuna, looked over at the new squad and frowned before turning back to the Hokage. I ask for protection, and this is what you give me. 3 wet behind the ears kids and a man who looks, well, creepy. Hiruzen was about to protest, but his face suddenly lit up as if remembering something. Orochimaru, I almost forgot. Jiraiya sent me a message a couple of hours ago saying he needs your help infiltrating a base undetected. I advise you leave as soon as possible. I've already arranged for someone to take over your team in your absence. The snake Sannin nodded and vanished in Shunshin. Naruto, who was now wide-eyed, looked at the aged man in front of him in shock. What, sensei isn't even going to go on our first C-rank mission with us? And what do you mean by having someone take over as our sensei? 1. Suddenly a spiky silver-haired man poked his head through the window. You requested me, Hokage-sama? Kakashi, I'm glad you arrived, and right on time too. The aged Sarutobi said the last mart with a grin, seeing the puzzled look in his eye. I don't understand, Kakashi asked, puzzled. I thought I was late. Hiruzen chuckled at the elite Jonin's puzzled look. Yes, but I knew you'd be late, so I told you to be here 2 hours ago. The silver-haired man glared at his aged leader before turning to the young genin team that would be taking on a mission, and nearly had a stroke when he saw our favorite blonde genin. He looks just like Minato-sensei, Kakashi thought to himself. He then gave the young team his trademark eye smile before bringing his favorite orange book to his face once again. Everyone who knew him previously, including all the hidden ANBU, sweat dropped at the sight, while the genin just looked at him confused. The Hokage sighed while he shook his head before turning to address the young Dijitsu-wielding shinobi. This is Kakashi Hatake. He will be your substitute sensei for whenever Orochimaru is called away on other missions. Kakashi gave them a small wave and an eye smile before letting Hiruzen continue. He will be the Jonin leader on this mission. Tazuna chose this moment to open his slightly drunk mouth. Wait, I asked for protection, and you give me a scarecrow and 3 milk-drinking kids? He would have kept going if it weren't for the fact that he suddenly found himself pinned to the wall by Saban needles stabbing into his clothing courtesy of Naruto's Saban launchers. Tazuna sweated a bit at the glare the 3 young shinobi were giving him. The aged leader sighed, taking deep inhale of his pipe before speaking to the young teens. Would you please free the client? It is not good for mission success if you try to kill the person you're being paid to protect. The 3 teammates looked down in slight shame before they went and removed their charge from the wall where he was pinned. They then lined up in front of the Hokage facing their substitute sensei, who had moved in front of the Hokage's desk. Alright team, meet at the gate in 1 hour. Bring enough supplies to last you the week. But don't weigh yourself down with too much gear. Spoke the masked nin. Team 7 released a chorus of hi. Before vanishing to get their equipment from their respective houses. They met up at the gate with Tazuna and then left for Wave Country, though no one noticed how nervous Tazuna looked as they left. Few hours later, Naruto, Sasuke, and Hinata were all discussing their relative Dijitsu, and Kakashi and Tazuna were walking in silence. As they were watching, they saw a puddle in the distance. They all looked at each other, then began speaking in whispers. Do you see the puddle too? Asked Sasuke. Yeah, but it hasn't rained in weeks. Hinata, can you check it with your Byakugan? The pale-eyed heiress nodded her head before silently activating her KekkeiGenkai. She gasped as she saw 2 figures in the puddle that appeared to be around Chunin level. After revealing the information to her male counterparts, they looked at their substitute sensei, silently asking him if he saw them. Kakashi nodded slightly, letting them know he saw them too. They all nodded while preparing themselves for an attack. Sure enough, right as they passed the puddle, 2 figures emerged from the puddle and proceeded to wrap a spiked chain around Kakashi. As they pulled it, ripping him apart, Sasuke and Naruto proceeded to throw kunai at the duo, which caught their chain, pinning it to a tree. Before one of them could release his chain, Hinata appeared in front of him, unleashing a fury of Juken strikes, making him unable to move and slump over. 2. Hinata immediately jumped away, seeing with her Byakugan that his partner had lunged at her with one of his clawed gauntlets. Naruto jumped between them, blocking the claw with his katana. The remaining assailant attempted to lash out at our blonde hero with his other claw, but suddenly was forced back when Naruto's foot found itself in his gut. Getting his wind back, he saw the last of the genin trio finishing up some hand signs and immediately thought, shit. When he saw that he had finished on the Tora hand sign, Sasuke inhaled deeply before yelling out, Katan, Great fireball jutsu. He exhaled and a medium-sized fireball came out, though still impressive for someone so young, and slammed into the missing Nin, who was sent flying backward, slamming into a tree with multiple burn marks all over his body. Kakashi then decided to reappeared and pull out a spool of ninja wire and proceed to tie the Kirinuke Nin to a tree. He then turned around to see a slightly irritated Genin team. It was Naruto who spoke. Sensei, why did you not help us with the too dangerous nuke Nin? The masked Jonin rubbed the back of his head sheepishly before replying. I wanted to see how skilled you were, and how you would react in a life-or-death situation, especially since you're not my team. But I must say I'm quite impressed I didn't learn as much as I wanted to since you dispatched them so quickly. The three Genin seemingly accepted his answer and fell back into position. Kakashi then turned towards Tazuna, who suddenly found his shoes quite fascinating. Kakashi spoke with a strong tone that reflected his XANBU captain status. Why is it we encountered enemy Nin on a mission that was supposed to be C rank? Normally this type of mission is at least a B rank, and if we encounter a Jonin, which I suspect we will, then it could even turn into an A rank. Tell me one good reason why we shouldn't abandon this mission and return home right now. Tazuna's eyes widened at the last part. Not wanting the ninja to leave, immediately broke into a sob story how his country didn't have enough money to afford a higher ranked mission, and how if they left then his wife and grandchild would forever blame the Leaf Ninja, and how his grandson would cry over his death. Needless to say, the four shinobi ignored him for the most part, not really caring, but that did not mean they wanted to back down. The recent events only inspired them to want to take this mission even more. For Naruto and Sasuke to see how well they could do against a serious opponent, while for Hinata she was thinking about how doing a high-class mission as a genin might get her father and her clan to see her as more than a failure. Kakashi then turned to his temporary students and asked, "Let's vote on it then. We will continue this mission if you think you are ready for it." They looked at him with only confidence and determination, while Hinata was a little nervous. Orochimaru was helping her with that, and she had made good progress, but it was still there. But it was Naruto who spoke. "We need to do this, sensei, if not for the old man here then to see how far we've come in our training." His ringed eyes oozing confidence. Kakashi nodded, looking at his other two charges to see if they shared this view, only to see them nod in agreement. He sighed as he suspected the mission would probably escalate but knew that he couldn't change their minds, so he proceeded to turn and gesture for Tazuna to continue leading them on their way to his home. The aged bridge builder's eyes watered and proceeded to tell them of his thanks over and over before finally continuing on their way to Wave Country. Several hours later, they made it to a shore where they saw an old man waiting for them with a small boat that looked like it was probably used for fishing. They all climbed in, and the aged man proceeded to row them across the river. When they got to the other side, Tazuna gave the man a quick thanks before the fisherman pushed off and disappeared into the fog. They had been walking for a while, and it had been thus far uneventful. Tazuna saw this and the quiet as a good sign that they would be able to make it without another incident. But the shinobi knew better. They hadn't heard any sounds of wildlife in a while, which was a sign that they were probably being watched, and the fact that the fog was getting even thicker was not helping them at all. Hinata activated her Byakugan and taking a look around, she saw a rather large signature vanish right out of her range before she could get a good look at it. She relayed this information to her sensei, who nodded and whispered for her to activate her Byakugan every minute or so in case they returned. A few minutes later, when she was doing one her sweeps of the area, she saw something coming towards them. Quickly identifying the object as a ridiculously large blade, immediately yelled, "Everyone get down!" Everyone lunged for the ground, Kakashi pulling Tazuna down with him to make sure he didn't lose his head since he didn't have near the same speed as the rest of them. The large cleaver-like blade continued flying till it got stuck in a tree, where a masked man proceeded to jump on top of the large blade. He was wearing camo-styled pants, was shirtless, and had a white bandana-shaped cloth draped over his mouth and nose. He spoke in a deep and threatening voice. Well, what do we have here? A few wet behind the ears genin and the copycat Nin Kakashi. Well, this is a pleasant surprise to say the least. How about you give me the bridge builder, and I won't have to kill all of you? Kakashi responded while pulling out a kunai. Zabuza, the demon of the hidden mist, why am I not surprised by you showing up? But we won't surrender to Zuna-san, so I shall have to defeat you and combat myself, murdering demon. Once he finished his statement, him and his temporary students took their personal stances. Sasuke with his Uchiha intercept style, and with his fireball techniques hand signs going through his mind in preparation. Hinata fell into her improvised juken, which Orochimaru had helped her alter to fit her body's natural flexibility, and Naruto into the snake style which Orochimaru had taught him. Zabuza chuckled at the display of bravado from the young genin and their jonin sensei. He went through some hand signs before announcing Kirigakure Sojutsu. As he finished calling out the name of the technique, a thick mist rolled in, preventing them from seeing more than a foot in any direction. Hinata immediately activated her Byakugan, which helped, but was shocked to find that the technique limited her range more than not being there. She quickly surmised that it was due to the chakra that filled the mist, causing it to hinder her vision, but was still better than not having it at all. Naruto flipped through hand seals before shouting out, "Futon, great breakthrough!" Wind gushed out and blew the mist away from them, but it was short-lived as Zabuza just pumped more chakra into the technique, and the mist just came back as strong as ever. Naruto grimaced as he knew that it took him more chakra to get rid of the mist than it took Zabuza to bring it back, and due to the already small amount of chakra necessary to cast the technique, especially given their surroundings, he knew it was not worth wasting the energy. trying to rid the area of the technique, at least not until Zabuza used up more of his chakra. Kakashi took up a defensive stance while holding his kunai ready. He reached out with all of his senses hoping to hear or smell Zabuza. Meanwhile the genin withstood the battery that was the swordsman's killing intent. While they were not as affected as they would have been due to Orochimaru drilling them with his own, Sasuke and Hinata still were a bit scared due to them not having as much training as Naruto. But they hid it well and sucked it up, and maintained their defensive stances. Zabuza was mildly impressed at the young shinobi. Some Chunin couldn't even stand his killing intent. He felt he should try taking it up a notch to see if they could still keep their cool. 8 places: lungs, heart, kidneys, clavicle artery, brain, throat, liver, and throat. So many choices, but I can only choose one for each. Such a difficult decision. The genin shivered a bit of the killing intent-laced words, but still managed to stay strong and remain in their stances. All was quiet for several moments before Hinata's eyes widened since she saw Zabuza right in front of Naruto swinging his blade horizontally at him. Naruto's eyes widened and immediately brought his own blade to guard. The blades clashed in a shower of sparks. The two swordsmen were clashing, but Naruto was barely able to withstand Zabuza's strength. Luckily it didn't last long since Kakashi appeared behind Zabuza and stabbed him in the back with a kunai. But instead of blood, water came out, and the Zabuza dissolved into water, revealing it to be a water clone. A shadow appeared behind Kakashi, and sliced him in half only for a puddle of water to form, revealing Kakashi to be a water clone as well. The real Kakashi then appeared behind Zabuza and put a kunai to his throat. "This is over, Zabuza, you have lost." Zabuza chuckled before saying, "Most impressive, Kakashi, even in this mist you were able to counter my technique, but it still is not enough for you to win." As he said that, he dissolved into water, revealing itself as another water clone. Kakashi spun around quickly only to be kicked in the stomach and sent flying into the water. The second he landed he sensed something off about the water. "This water is too heavy." His eyes widened in realization, but it was already too late as he heard Zabuza call out, "Suetun, water entrapment jutsu." He was pulled into a ball of highly condensed water where he could barely move his fingers. The young students of Orochimaru eyes widened when they saw their Jonin commander trapped in a bubble of water. Zabuza smirked and formed a hand sign, and a water clone rose up in front of him and stepped out onto shore. The young teens took up positions. Sasuke and Naruto started going through hand signs before shouting Katan, Fire Ball Jutsu / Futon, Great Breakthrough. The two techniques combined and formed a massive firestorm which evaporated the clone and would have singed Zabuza's eyebrows if he had any. Knowing it was only a matter of time before Zabuza ran out of breath, Naruto stretched his hand out before calling out one of his favorite techniques, Shinra Tensei. Zabuza suddenly felt as if gravity began to pull him backwards and away from his jutsu, effectively ending it. Kakashi fell onto the water, keeping himself up with chakra, which had become second nature for a man of his caliber. He coughed a few times before he got his breath back and proceeded to stand back up and face Zabuza, who was picking himself up after being tossed through the air like a rag doll. Growling angrily, not knowing what force threw him, he redrew his massive cleaver blade and turned to face Kakashi. What happened next made the genin almost think that there was a mirror or something between the two, since they were going through the exact same seals right in time with each other before they simultaneously called out the name of the technique, Suetun, Water Dragon Jutsu. As they finished, two massive water dragons rose from the water and slammed into each other before destabilizing and falling back into the rest of the water. They then proceeded to do almost the same thing, but this time called out, Suetun, Great Waterfall Jutsu, as two large spouts of water shot out and again cancelled each other out. Zabuza's imaginary eyebrows furrowed in frustration as he thought, what is he doing? Is he reading my mind? Kakashi finished for him as Zabuza's eyes widened before furrowing again before calling out, I won't be beaten, as Kakashi also joined in, by a copycat monkey. They began going through hand seals again, but Kakashi finished his first before yelling out, Suetun, Great Waterfall Jutsu. The resulting water spout slammed Zabuza into a tree where Naruto, Hinata, and Sasuke took advantage of his prone figure and pinned him to the tree with kunai. As Kakashi approached the down-missed ninja, he heard him call out weakly, Can you see the future? Kakashi looked down with a careless glance while pulling out a kunai and saying, Yes, and I predict your future is death. But before anyone could do anything, a couple samban flew through the air before hitting Zabuza in his neck as he slumped over. A voice drew their attention. Thank you, I have been tracking him for quite a while but couldn't bring him down. Thank you for your assistance, as he knelt down next to the body and put his hands on it before vanishing in a mist. Shunshin. Kakashi turned towards the team before he collapsed face first into the earth. The team had arrived at Tazuna's home an hour or so later, and after meeting his daughter Tsunami and his grandson Inari, they put Kakashi into one of the extra beds there. Kakashi woke up the next day but was still too weak to get up out of bed, so he called up his temporary students upstairs. There's something I need to tell you, Kakashi said to the group as they sat in chairs at the foot of his bed. I believe that Zabuza is still alive. When he said that, they just kind of looked at him with a no-kidding look before Naruto decided to tell their sensei. We came to that conclusion yesterday while you were knocked out. Sasuke decided to give him some more detail on the subject. After we settled into the house, we discussed everything that occurred, and when we got to the part where the hunter Nin took Zabuza's body, we realized that he didn't decapitate the body first. Kakashi nodded, very impressed at their ability to look underneath the underneath. Kakashi sat up in bed and asked his Jujutsu-wielding trio if they all had something to train in. Seeing them nod, he laid back down to get some more rest. It was a couple of hours later, and the 3 students of Orochimaru were busy training in their respective specialties. Naruto was busy practicing his kenjutsu with a clone, Hinata was going through sets for her new gentle fist style, and Sasuke was trying to learn how to put people in a genjutsu through eye contact alone. As they were training, a set of eyes looked out of the darkness of the forest, and stared at the 3 training ninja. The stalker suddenly found himself lifted up by a hand grabbing the back of his shirt. Inari turned his head and saw the ringed eyes of Naruto staring back at him. "What are you doing here, Gaki? This is no place for kids, you could be hurt," said the blonde Jinchuriki to the boy with emo tendencies that could rival Sasuke's right after his family was killed. The young boy glared at Naruto before yelling, "What do you think you're doing? Nobody can beat Gato," before running off towards Tazuna's house. The 3 genin looked at each other for a second before shrugging and going back to their training. 3 days later, the 4 ninja were sitting having dinner with Tazuna and his family. They had just come back in from training, Kakashi helping Sasuke with his genjutsu, Hinata with her strength and agility, and Naruto with his chakra control. Dinner was relatively quiet, everyone content to eat in silence, but that silence was soon disrupted by an infuriated Inari. "Why do you all keep trying? You can't beat Gato." The 4 shinobi all looked up at him with the "are you kidding me" type look before it was Sasuke that spoke. "Kid Gato is a fat businessman. I'd be surprised if he was even able to hold a sword, let alone use one." This only seemed to make Inari even madder. "You all just talk, with your peaceful village. I doubt any of you even know what suffering is." He was suddenly silenced by killing intent being directed at him by all 4 ninja before he found himself slammed into the far wall by an invisible force before seeing Naruto use his powers to float over the table and then appear right in front of him, slamming his hand into the wall only centimeters from Inari's head. Shaking in fear, he looked up into the rage-filled eyes of Naruto's Rinnegan. "We don't know pain? Have you ever ran for your life on your birthday because the majority of the village wanted you dead?" Sasuke and Hinata felt bad for their blonde teammate for the hate he had to suffer, but Naruto wasn't finished. "Have you ever been forced to watch your whole clan get slaughtered in front of you by your own brother?" Sasuke's hand clenched into a fist at the memory of Itachi, but then heard Naruto keep going. "Have you tried to be kidnapped by a foreign country on your birthday to be turned into a breeder to give their country your bloodline only to be stopped and your uncle forced to give his life to keep the peace?" Hinata had a few tears at the memory of her late uncle, which was the reason why Niji hated her. Inari began to cry as Naruto let him fall to the ground as he marched out of the house. Kakashi yelled after him, "Naruto! Where are you going?" "To train," as he slammed the door, nearly knocking it off its hinges. A few minutes later he stopped in the middle of the forest, and drew his katana before launching wind blades at the surrounding trees, cutting them clean through only for them to fall a few seconds later, only to be incinerated later by a firestorm summoned from his blade. Raising himself into the air with his gravity manipulation, he then proceeded to close his eyes and focus. Then suddenly they snapped open again as he thrust his hands out while yelling, "Shinra Tensei!" causing a massive crater to form, clearing all life within a half a mile. He then lowered himself to the ground tiredly before he collapsed asleep. It was the next morning, where we find a feminine-looking young man walking around looking for herbs to heal his master with. As he was walking, he suddenly found a large pile of trees that looked as if something just pushed them all into a large pile in a perfect circle. Using his shinobi training, he easily got over it, only to see one of the young ninja he and his master had encountered the day before. He reached down looking like he was about to choke him before suddenly putting his hand lightly on his chest and gently shook the blonde while gently saying, "Wake up, if you sleep out here you'll catch your death." Haku's eyes widened at the purple ringed eyes as he realized that this young nin was like her. Naruto shook his head while sitting up before looking at the young feminine man kneeling in front of him. He smiled like that before he heard the young man speak. "What are you doing out here, and what happened to the forest?" Naruto rubbed the back of his head sheepishly at seeing what happened to the forest before answering. "Well, I'm out here training, and all this was caused by one of my jutsu. I was a bit mad last night and needed to vent some." "What are you doing out here?" Haku laughed at how he was changing the subject but went with it. "I'm out here looking for some herbs to help my precious person since he's injured." Naruto nodded before speaking. "That's very honorable. Protect him, cause it's those that are close to us that truly inspire to do our best." Haku nodded. "That's a very good point of view. You will become very strong. I also believe that you do your best when you're doing it for someone close to you." Naruto nodded in agreement. It was a few hours later that Naruto got back to Tazuna's home after helping Haku pick some herbs after destroying part of the forest. It was the next morning. 3 of the 4 ninja were ready to go with the bridge builder, but the blonde member was still asleep from his hard training since Kakashi wanted him to get his rest after using up a lot of chakra the day before. As they made it to the bridge, they saw all the workers unconscious with a heavy mist over the whole area. Tazuna looked around before yelling out, "What's going on here?" A dark chuckling made itself known as the forms of several Zabuza clones revealed themselves before his deep voice echoed throughout the mist. "Last chance, copycat. Give me the bridge builder, and you can keep your miserable life." Kakashi only laughed at the suggestion. "Sasuke, do it." Sasuke blurred away only for him to reappear a second later, as the clones all exploded into water. Zabuzas and another figure that ended up to be the hunter Nin revealed themselves in the mist before Zabuza turned to his shorter apprentice before speaking. Looks like you have a rival for speed. The fake hunter Nin only nodded in response before he and Sasuke disappeared. Kakashi turned and faced the real Zabuza. Drawing kunai in each hand, he entered a defensive fighting style and prepared to face Zabuza. Haku and Sasuke were a short ways away engaging in a taijutsu fight. The smacking of limbs colliding with rival limbs. They finally clashed Sanban to kunai as Haku spoke. It appears I have you where I want you. Sasuke looked puzzled at Haku. How is that exactly? The surrounding air is filled with water, and while you need both hands to make hand signs, I however do not. Haku finished before he started doing single-handed hand signs. Hayatan, 1,000 water needles. Sasuke's eyes widened as Haku leapt away from him as he was assaulted by the frigid ice needles. When the mist cleared, it showed Sasuke standing and doing a very good imitation of a porcupine. Sasuke shook his head and took a deep breath as he channeled fire chakra through his body, melting the needles that were embedded in his flesh. Turning around, he faced Haku as he began going through hand seals before breathing deeply. Katan, fire dragon missile. Sasuke then exhaled a torrent of flames that took the shape of a dragon as it let out a roar before exploding, consuming Haku in the explosion. Sasuke panted a bit from the powerful technique as he squinted his eyes to try and see what was left of Haku before Sharingan eyes widened upon seeing a small dome of ice amidst the flames. The dome then melted, revealing Haku standing there unscathed. Sasuke gritted his teeth as he pulled out a second kunai before switching both to reverse grip and prepared a defensive stance. Haku smirked under his mask as he went through hand signs as Sasuke tensed his body in preparation as Haku called out the name of his technique, Hayatan, Demon Ice Mirrors. Sasuke's eyes narrowed upon seeing the mirrors surround him. His eyes widened upon seeing Haku step into the mirror, and his reflection appear on all of them. Give up, none have seen my mirrors from the inside and live, spoke Haku as he pulled out a fist of Saban. Sasuke's only response was to narrow his eyes as he prepared his kunai to defend. Haku sighed as he proceeded to jump from mirror to mirror, launching Saban. Back at Tazuna's home, we find Naruto woken from his sleep by Tsunami screaming. He immediately grabbed Shinryu's handle as he jumped out of the window onto the roof to see a couple samurai wannabes dragging Tsunami down the docks. Before he could do anything, he saw Inari run after them with a kitchen knife in hand. Immediately substituted Inari, then using his speed grabbed Tsunami from the thug's clutches. The two goons immediately turned and saw one of the Konoha Nin holding the woman they came to take as a hostage as he set her down, then used his sword to expertly cut the ropes, holding her. They pointed their swords at the kid before smirking and charging what they thought would be an easy kill. Naruto seemingly just vanished to them and appeared behind them, flicking the blood off his sword. The thugs' eyes widened as they fell to the ground, their chests cut open by Orochimaru's apprentice. Naruto turned back to Tazuna's home and spoke to Inari, who was standing there protectively over his mom. Inari, they need me over on the bridge. Take your mom and find somewhere safe to hide, okay? Inari nodded as he dragged his mom back into their house. Seeing them safe for now, he jumped into the trees towards the bridge in order to help his team. Back at the bridge, we find Sasuke breathing hard with several needles all over his body. He held onto his kunai, deflecting all the Sanban he could, but there were so many. He was able to scratch the fake Hunter Nin's mask with a kunai when his Sharingan evolved to its third tomo, but after the ice user had sped up again and Sasuke lost track of him. Sasuke's head jerked behind him when he heard Haku speak. Give up now or else I cannot guarantee your survival. Sasuke glared at the Yuki clan member. I will never give up. And Uchiha never backs down, spoke the duck-haired Avenger. Haku sighed at his response as he raised two more fists full of Saban as he proceeded to barrage Sasuke with a new level of ferocity. Naruto was running top speed toward the bridge. As he made it through the tree cover surrounding the bridge, the first thing he saw was Kakashi fighting Zabuza. But then he saw something that shocked him greatly. He saw a dome of mirrors, and in the middle he saw a massive volley of Saban impact with Sasuke's body as Sasuke fell to his knees before he collapsed completely. Naruto's eyes widened before he shouted, Sasuke! Then something that no one thought possible happened. As if possessed, Naruto grabbed his own wrist and pulled, and rather than pull the whole arm, a cable carrying what appeared to be dozens of warheads came out before firing and creating massive explosions that destroyed all the ice mirrors and blowing Haku far across the clearing, covered in burns and cuts from shrapnel. His mask was shattered and his face slowly became exposed. As Naruto came blurred in front of Haku, the last piece of his mask fell off his face as Naruto stopped dead in his tracks with his eyes wide at who the Hunter Nin was. Haku looked up at the blonde Rinnegan wielder with eyes filled with defeat, as if his whole meaning of existence was stolen from him before speaking. Go ahead, finish me. I am a broken tool and Zabuza-sama has no need for a broken tool. Naruto's eyes widened at the words spoken by the ice-wielding orphan boy. Don't be a baka. Haku, tools can be repaired or reforged into something new. You don't need to die. Haku's eyes closed. You don't understand. I have been defeated. Zabuza-sama will not accept me back. As Haku spoke those words, tears came from his eyes as he knew his precious person would accept him back. As they were talking, they suddenly heard a sound that sounded like 1,000 birds all crying out. As they turned, they saw Kakashi holding a ball of lightning in his hand, and Zabuza was being restrained by several dogs of various sizes. Haku's eyes widened at the sight of his master. He quickly drew some Saban and threw them at Naruto, who was forced to block them. When Naruto turned back to Haku, he was gone. He turned his head to find him, only to see him emerge from a mirror only about a meter from where Kakashi was thrusting his Raikiri. Kakashi had finally captured Zabuza and had begun his charge, which was unstoppable at this point no matter what Zabuza might try. But as he was about to make contact with Zabuza, he saw a figure jump between them. He tried to turn to avoid the boy, but it was unnecessary as the young man was suddenly pulled out of the way by an unseen force as his hand plunged into Zabuza's heart. Zabuza coughed up blood as he fell to the ground hard. Haku, after recovering from the Bansho Tenin, ran over to Zabuza's side as he was dying. He cried as Zabuza turned his head and looked him in the eye. Haku, live on, do not mourn me for long but move on. But as my last request, take my blade, do not let me fade from the memory. Make my legacy live on through you. Make sure everyone remembers the demon of the mist as you become the demon of the ice. As he finished his sentence, Haku let tears fall from his eyes as he knelt by his fallen master before his head snapped up at the sound of an annoying voice. My, how the mighty have fallen. I knew he was nothing but a baby demon, and now that he's out of the way, my men here can finish the job. The man speaking revealed himself to be Gato, who had brought with him an army of a little under 100 armed thugs. I'm going to have to pay him back for failing, so maybe after I kill the rest of them and cut off his head for his bounty, I'll have his body cut into 100 pieces, then threw them into the sea. Ending with a maniacal grin, he was forced to take a step back as the temperature dropped several degrees. Everyone turned to see Haku stand up with the Kubikirahucho in his grasp as everyone saw frost creep up the sides of the blade. Gato seemed to freeze in his spot as he made eye contact with the apprentice of the man he just slandered. Steam seemed to come off of the large sword from the sheer cold. Gato took a few steps back into his personal army as Haku ran forward toward the cowardly drug tycoon. As the men got in the way of Haku to protect their boss, they were mercilessly cut down by the massive blade wielded by lithe form of the young man in front of them. As the crowd of hired swords moved aside, unwilling to die for the corrupt midget, Gato backed away from the young icy bringer of death as Haku's silhouette walked closer with his long hair billowing behind him. Gato was beyond terrified at this point. Gato closed his eyes waiting for the icy cold blade to end his existence, but instead of a blade he felt a hand grab his head. He opened his eyes only to look into the icy cold eyes of Haku as uttered a single word, freeze. After hearing the young man utter the lone word, he realized he couldn't move as a numbness spread through his whole body as he was frozen from the inside out. After the process was finished, Hake punched the frozen man, causing the ice to shatter. Haku turned around and walked back to the group of Konoha ninjas before he collapsed on the ground. The whole group was shocked at the young man, but unfortunately the thugs came out of their stupor first. That brat just killed our meal ticket. Now we'll have to ransack the town, and that girl is looking awfully pretty down there. Hinata was conflicted between throwing up and shivering at the thought of those people touching her. Though apparently Hinata wasn't the only one disturbed by their words, Naruto simply thrust out a hand before saying in a low voice, Shinra Tensei. All the thugs suddenly found themselves forcefully thrown off the bridge by the invisible force that was the Shinra Tensei. Just as the last thug fell off the unfinished back of the bridge, the whole town of Nami showed up with axes and pitchforks. Inari, who was leading them with a crossbow, looked around and saw Haku and Zabuza laying on the ground, Kakashi and Naruto tired, and Hinata healing a seriously wounded Sasuke. Inari rubbed the back of his head before sheepishly asking, Hee, are we too late to help out? Only to receive a deadpan look from the whole Team 7, including the recently conscious Sasuke. The whole mob of villagers blushed while rubbing the back of their heads. It was a week later that we find our heroes walking across the bridge that they helped to protect during the construction. As Team 7 plus Haku waved at the villagers as they walked across the bridge, Inari turned to his grandfather. Grandpa, we still need to name the bridge. You're right, Inari. Its name should represent hope and inspire those who see it. Let's call it the Great Naruto Bridge. The whole town cheered at the suggestion from the aged bridge builder. 6 eyes of the snake Chunin exams. As the picture fades and we find 2 people named Kotetsu and Izumo sitting at the booth right next to the gate. I'm so bored, I want some action. Why do we always seem to get gate duty? Moaned Kotetsu. It's not all bad, at least we don't run the risk of dying like we would out on active missions, besides it's relaxing. Spoke the calmer, red lazier Izumo. Whatever, I just wish something interesting would happen. Spoke the spiky-haired Kotetsu. And if Kami herself had been listening in. 5 people then walked through the gate of the village. Though these were not ordinary people, the first to pass through the gate was Sasuke Uchiha, who was famous for being the only survivor of the Uchiha massacre. Then came Naruto, the boy known as the apprentice of the legendary Orochimaru, and wielder of the legendary Rinnegan. Next was the heiress of the Hyuga clan, who wields all-seeing Byakugan and the strongest female in their graduating class. Next was a girly-looking boy who they didn't recognize, but what they did recognize was the massive sword on his back, the Kubikiri Hocho, the legendary blade of Zabuza, the demon of the bloody mist. In the midst of their fear of the massive blade, they almost a lazy-looking man in a Jonin vest with one eye covered the well-renowned Kakashi Hatake, also known as Sharingan. No, Kakashi. Kakashi gave a side hand wave as they passed the 2 eternal gatekeepers who had yet to pick up their jaws from the floor. After they had left, they looked at each other before Izumo punched Kotetsu in the face and knocked him to the ground before Kotetsu jumped up angrily shouting, "What the hell was that for team? For wishing for something interesting to happen. Now see what happens, just stay quiet and enjoy doing nothing for money." Kotetsu slouched into his chair muttering curses about lazy partners. Meanwhile, back at the Hokage Tower, Team 7 along with their replacement sensei and Haku were standing outside the large double doors leading to the Hokage's office. Kakashi yelled, "Kakashi and Team 7 here for debriefing." They heard a voice telling them to enter as they saw the Hokage sitting in his chair with Orochimaru leaning against the wall with a smirk on his face. The 3 students of Orochimaru smiled largely as they called out, "Sensei." Orochimaru gave his students a smile and small hand wave. It was 30 minutes later that Team 7 finished their briefing, shocking both the Hokage and Orochimaru. Sarutobi was shocked that the team performed so well and that Haku was the apprentice of Zabuza and had the ice bloodline that was thought to have been wiped out. Orochimaru, however, had been surprised that Naruto had unlocked another path for his Rinnegan. It was another few minutes before Hiruzen dismissed the young genins, leaving him, Orochimaru, and Kakashi in the room as Hiruzen turned on the silencing seals as his face turned deadly serious. "Orochimaru, please reveal to Kakashi what you and Jiraiya discovered on your mission." Orochimaru's eyes got a serious expression to them as he nodded. 1 month ago, Jiraiya's spy network got a hit on a new organization that was beginning to go on the rise. This organization is entirely made up of S-class criminals. Kakashi nearly choked on air when he heard that piece of information. An organization made entirely of S-class criminals was sure to be extremely dangerous, but what cause would appeal to that many different people with such enormous strength? Leads this group, since without a leader surely they would collapse and wipe each other out. The Hokage and Sannin both nodded their heads before the snake-like man spoke. "That's the conclusion me and Jiraiya reached as well, and the members seem to fear and revere him as if he was some kind of god, but we have no other information on him other than they call him Pain." Kakashi's Sharingan could almost be seen through his modified forehead protector. His eyes were popping so far from his head before he composed himself. "What do you know of any of the members?" The two sighed before again the snake summoner spoke. "Most of them we are unaware. The only ones we do know are Itachi Uchiha and Kisame Hashigaki, and that's because they are the ones after the Kyuubi." Kakashi's eye got even wider at the knowledge of the ones who were targeting his sensei's legacy. Kakashi immediately thought to himself, "There's no way I'm gonna let sensei down by letting his son be killed by Nuke Nin. I'll protect him till my dying breath, that's a promise, sensei." Kakashi turned around and began to march out the door to find Guy, since if anyone knew hardcore training it was Guy. The two legends watched the silver-haired Jonin walk out of the room. Orochimaru looked over at Hiruzen and began to shun Shin out. Right before he left, Hiruzen spoke. "Before you go, be here tomorrow at 4 o'clock for Chunin exam team sign-ups." Orochimaru nodded at his sensei as he vanished in a swirl of leaves. Hiruzen sighed as he called his secretary to come and clean up the leaves. Our 3 favorite genin were walking down the road toward their favorite training ground when they suddenly saw an blur go past that looked suspiciously similar to the Hokage's grandson Konohamaru, and then another pink one that made Sasuke shiver due to it being his #1 fangirl Sakura Haruno. The blonde shinobi sighed, knowing Kono probably said something stupid to piss her off at him, and that Sakura might accidentally hurt him and get in trouble with the Hokage even, though it wouldn't be too bad when he heard Sakura yell at someone to let Kono go. He sighed as he nodded at his teammates, as they leaped onto the fence separating them from what was going on, only to see Kono being held up by the top of his head about to be punched by a kid wearing makeup and a cat suit with a Suna forehead protector. The cat suit made them pause for a second before Naruto held out his hand and used his Bansho Tenin to pull the young Sarutobi to his hand. The young animal impersonator looked around confused about what just happened before Team 7 jumped down. Naruto carrying the honorable grandson on his shoulder. The Suna Nin became angry at being foiled so easily, while the blonde behind him in a purple outfit with a massive fan strapped to her back blushed heavily seeing the two jump down, while they must be some local hotties. Hinata glared at the blonde Suna Nin, seeing her look lustfully toward her object of affection. Kankuro glared at the group before he heard the smug-looking black-haired Konoha Nin speak. "What are 2 foreign Nin doing here picking on the Hokage's grandson?" Sakura squealed fangirlishly at seeing her true love. Kankuro paled when he heard that the kid he was picking on was related to the Hokage. Tamari paled, since if anything had happened they could have been kicked from the village. Sakura chose this time to open her mouth. "What are you doing in our village?" The Dijutsu-wielding squad face-palmed at the pink banshee, since they even knew what was going on soon, and they just got back from a several-week mission. Kankuro and Tamari both pulled out their village passes before smirking confidently. "We're here for the Chunin exams." Sakura's eyes widened, not knowing, as Orochimaru's students just shook their head before Naruto looked up into a nearby tree before shouting, "Yo, when are you gonna come down from there?" The 2 Sand siblings looked over to the tree before paling, seeing their red-headed brother Gaara as the redhead decided to speak. "Kankuro, you're a disgrace. Don't make Suna look foolish, or I'll kill you." Kankuro paled and began to shake before answering shakily, "Hi-G Gaara." Gaara jumped down before turning and began to leave with his siblings before hearing the cocky black-haired boy speak again. "Hey you, what's your name?" Tamari turned around blushing slightly before gesturing to her shyly. "Who? Me? No, the redhead." She sighed in disappointment before the redhead spoke. "My name is Gaara. I'm also curious to what you and that blonde's names are." "Sasuke Uchiha and Naruto Uzumaki," spoke the 2 males of Team 7. Gaara turned back around before he turned his head and spoke again. "I'll enjoy feeding your blood to mother." That took all the Konoha members off guard as the foreign Nins turned the corner and left the area. After a small change of scenery, we find ourselves in a room with all the senseis and Chunin instructors for the Chunin exam recommendations. We see Orochimaru step up in front of everyone before announcing, "I, Orochimaru of the Sannin, nominate Team 7 for the Chunin exams." The whole room broke out in whispers at hearing a rookie team get nominated, and they would only get louder after hearing the next two nominations. "I, Kurina Yuhi, nominate Team 8 for the Chunin exams." "I, Asuma Sarutobi, nominate Team 10 for the Chunin exams." At this, everyone in the room was flabbergasted at the declaration of the three senseis. Well, everyone but one, who was crying, yelling about how strong their flames of youth must be. I'll let you guess who that is. About 30 minutes later, the meeting was dismissed, and the senseis were dismissed, and Orochimaru left to meet up with his genin to tell them the good news. He bit his thumb and went through some hand signs before he slammed his hands to the ground, and a seal appeared before a puff of smoke before three small snakes appeared. "Hibi, Sakura, Zuru, I need you guys to go tell my team to come to our usual training ground." The three summons nodded before they slithered out at a high speed, following the sense of the three genin. It was only 20 minutes later that we find the full Team 7 sitting in Training Ground 7 with curiosity written all over the three genin's faces. The snake Sannin handed all three genin of his forms, stating, "These are forms required to enter the Chunin exams. If you wish to compete, then show up at the academy at 8 a.m. on Friday." Genin nodded before leaving to go get some rest so they could be at their best for Friday. Friday came quickly as we find our favorite team of genin standing in front of the Konoha Academy with determined looks on their faces as they walked through the door and into the academy. As they got to the second floor, they saw a crowd of students standing around a room labeled 304 with two large genin blocking the way. They slapped their foreheads at the obvious genjutsu on the door and continued to go up the stairs before they could be caught up in anything. As they entered the door, they were hit with killing intent. They resisted the urge to laugh at their attempt, as Orochimaru had gotten them used to Sannin level KI. Naruto looked over to Sasuke, who smirked as the two released their own, effectively shutting the room up. They suddenly heard his annoying voice yell out, "Hey, it's those losers, Team 7. The voice was revealed to be the resident dog training shinobi. The three then turned to the sound of irritation to reveal Team 8, consisting of Kiba, Shinu, and Sakura, who could be presently found asking the resident Uchiha out on a date, and not really taking his rejections at all, as she kept trying, and this is all within 5 minutes. The other two pairs of teammates are currently found looking at each other, while Shino seemed more interested in watching a beetle that was going down the wall, and Hinata was looking through her equipment pouch doing last-minute checks. So in all reality, I guess it was just Naruto and Kiba that were currently having the staring contest. After glaring for a few seconds, Kiba broke off and approached Hinata, who was just finishing her last checks. "Yo, Hinata, you want to go out sometime?" As he gave her a smug look as if she should be honored, he even asked. Hinata looked up and responded with a simple, "No." Kiba face planted and immediately stood back up with a look that seemed angry yet confused at the same time. What do you mean no?" He responded with a glare. She rolled her eyes before saying, "It means I don't want to go out with you. It's not a hard concept to grasp. But then again, you do have a difficulty with the idea of bathing." She retorted with a smirk and began to laugh at the look on his face, while in the background Naruto and half the room was on the floor in laughter. Even Gaara could be seen chuckling, which would have left his siblings with their mouths on the floor if they could have opened their eyes through their laughter. Kiba was currently red with anger and embarrassment. How could that wench reject him like that? He was an alpha who could select any girl of his choosing, and he selected Hinata. So she should be his, damn it, thought the resident mutt. He reached out and was about to grab her arm roughly, but before he could even get close, his arm was grabbed by a much stronger one. Looking to see who dared touch him, as he was about to put who he believed to be his mate in her place, he paled and saw a Rinnegan-powered glare directed at him as he suddenly found himself propelled away by an unseen force, cracking the nearby wall from the force. As he was shacking off his days, he suddenly felt a blade directed at his neck, as a voice that held restrained anger in it spoke. "If I ever catch you trying to force yourself on anyone, I will cut off what makes you a man, no matter how small it already is. Am I understood?" Kiba looked up in fear as he quickly nodded and sighed in relief after feeling the blade get pulled away, but inwardly he was seething as he thought, "How dare he deny me what's rightfully mine as an alpha? I'll show him by showing him up in the exams, and then Hinata shall be begging me to accept her as my mate, as she should be right now." While Kiba was having his inner tantrum, Naruto was deep in thought. Why did I react that way when I saw him moving in on Hinata? I must have just wanted to protect my teammate. Yeah, that's gotta be it. Sure, Kit, whatever you want to believe, but you know what they say, denial isn't just a river in River Country. Naruto shook off his tenant's remark as he walked back over to his team. Meanwhile, with Hinata, who was blushing up a storm at having been saved by her crush, slowly worked her blush down as Naruto turned around and smiled at her before he walked back towards where she and Sasuke were still standing after the mutt was forcefully subjugated. Team 7 walked away from the other groups a bit so they could strategize, but they decided to listen in on the group when they heard a silver-headed genin speak. "You rookies should probably calm down. This isn't a game, and drawing attention to yourselves can get you killed later down the line." Kiba, who was already in a bad mood from being thrown into a wall and being denied what he saw as his, immediately shouted at the young man. "Who the hell do you think you are, telling us to quiet down?" The silver-haired genin shook his head and chuckled at the dog trainer's brashness, but spoke. "My name's Kabuto, and I'm what you would call a veteran of these exams." "So how many times have you taken this exam?" asked Sakura. Kabuto rubbed the back of his head sheepishly before responding, "This will be my 7th time taking this exam." Some like Shikamaru, whose eyes widened at the fact that the exam was that challenging, and then there is Kiba, who said, "Wow, you must suck," only to be slapped on the back of his head by his bug-using teammate for being rude. Kabuto blushed slightly out of embarrassment. Over with Team 7 they were whispering between each other about the silver-haired exam veteran. That's Sensei's spy and chief medic Kabuto. He's really about Jonin level and his specialty is getting information from villages. That's why he's take this exam so many times, since it's an easy way to get into enemy villages without suspicion, and to make sure he never passes he always forfeits before he enters the tournament stage. Spoke the spiky-haired Uzumaki. His two teammates nodded in confirmation, since their respective digitsus had already seen that he was suppressing his chakra. Back with the other group of genins, Kabuto had just pulled out a deck of cards. These are my information cards. They contain information on just about everyone in these exams. The genin listening, including Team 7, immediately looked around to see who they wanted to get information about. Team 7 suddenly reappeared among them as Sasuke spoke, the redhead from Suna with the gourd and oozing blood lust. The spy nodded before sifting through his cards before he found the one he was looking for as he began reading. Gaara no Sabaku, youngest son of the Kazekage. His teammates are his siblings Temari and Kankuro no Sabaku. He has gone on 15 D ranks, 4 C ranks, and WoW at B rank, and says that he has never even been touched in any of his missions. All the genin were flabbergasted at the news that he had never once been touched. Naruto's eyes panned across the room before he suddenly saw a blonde woman who looked in her mid-teens with a Kumo headband and a lot of chakra. He pointed in her direction subtly and said her. Kabuto looked and immediately knew who he was talking about. He shifted through his cards before pulling out the correct one and began reading. Her name's Yujito and she has been on 20 D ranks, 10 C ranks, 2 B ranks, and an A rank. Her sensei is Kurwa Kaminari no Dari of the Black Lightning, and her teammates' names are Omo and Karui, though I don't know their last names, and she seems to be highly skilled in Katan Jutsu. The last part piqued our local Uchiha's interest, as he hoped to copy some good techniques from some of these people. One more voice immediately spoke up. I want to know about Naruto Uzumaki. And this voice belonged to Kiba Inuzuka. Kabuto sighed, as he had really hoped no one was going to ask him about his master's protege, but he gave Naruto an apologetic look as he fished out the card. Naruto Uzumaki. He's been on 14 D ranks, and 1 C rank that was changed to A rank. His sensei is Orochimaru of the Sannin, and his teammates are Sasuke Uchiha and Hinata Hyuga. He has the Jujutsu the Rinnegan, and was Orochimaru's apprentice before he became a genin. Kiba was seething at how strong Naruto so obviously was, but since there was nothing he could do to him, settled for glaring at him. Team 7 had just turned away to go and discuss amongst themselves when a large cloud of smoke appeared in the room to reveal a large man who appeared to be a jonin, along with about a dozen or so extra Chunin helpers. Shut up and sit down. If you aren't in your seat in 30 seconds, your ass will be out of this exam, was the booming voice of the large man who was clearly the chief proctor of the exams. They all scrambled to their seats without any teams being eliminated. All right, maggots, my name's Marino Ibiki, and I'll be the proctor for the first phase of the exam. The first test is a written exam. His instructions were cut off by the sound of a thud colliding against the desk. Looking to the source of the sound, everyone saw a clump of spiky blonde hair face down on the desk. Ibiki cleared his throat before continuing. As I was saying, the tests are scored as a team, meaning that if anyone on the team fails, your whole team fails, and if get caught cheating 3 times, you're out of the exams. This made Naruto raise his eyebrow and begin plotting on how he would cheat. The tests were passed out a few minutes later. He noticed Hinata and Sasuke were using their respective dojutsus to cheat. He discreetly bit his thumb enough to draw blood before he did some hand seals under the desk before performing a summoning technique to summon a small chameleon with the Rinnegan. As he sent the chameleon to the ceiling of the class, he connected to the creature's Rinnegan, and was able to see everyone's answers in the room. After the test was complete, and many teams had been removed, some more forcefully than others, Ibiki came up to the front. It is time to administer the final question of the exam. Taking the question is optional, but if you decide not to take it, you will be removed from the exams. He was interrupted by all the genin shouting out about why wouldn't they take it, they'd be stupid not to take it, etc. Ibiki raised his hand, signaling everyone to shut up as he finished his previous statement. But those who do take the question but get it wrong will never be able to take the Chunin exams again. This caused the room to explode into even greater amount of yelling and protests about unfairness, and that he can't do that, but nobody reading this really cares now, do they? As teams began to forfeit, not wanting to lose their chances of making Chunin, their numbers declined significantly. As a few minutes passed and no more people left, Ibiki decided to enlighten the genin about the true nature of the test. Those of you brave enough to stay, congratulations, you pass. A few moments passed before there was a loud shout of, "What?" Ibiki chuckled and was about to continue, but before he could get any words out, he was interrupted by a black ball crashing through the window. 2 kunai came from the ball and lodged into the walls, holding up a banner that said the sexy and single proctor Anko Mitarashi, as the ball unfurled to reveal a rather scantily clad woman with purple hair wearing a tan overcoat and a fishnet shirt underneath. She was also wearing a rather short skirt that showed off her legs. She turned to the room and said, "Wow, Ibiki, you let 23 teams pass? You must be losing your touch." Ibiki then came out from behind the banner and responded, "They are just an astounding group of genin this year." Anko chuckled before she responded with, "We'll see, but in the next exam I'll be cutting these numbers in half." This made all the members of the room sweat a little bit at this, but Naruto and Sasuke just smirked and were hoping to get a good fight in. A half hour passed before they made it to the location of the second phase of the exam. What greeted them was a tall fence surrounding a forest full of trees taller than any of them had ever seen. Beyond the fence they heard wails and ferocious growls from animals. Some of the weaker teams gulped upon approaching the fence while some of the stronger teams were excited to test themselves against the beasts in the forest. Naruto smirked as he had spent a lot of time in this forest, especially when he was training with his sword's abilities. Furthermore, he had returned a few times since it was a great place for some serious training. Anko then said, each team starts out with one scroll, a heaven or an earth scroll, and you must steal the other scroll from another team and then take both scrolls to the tower located in the middle of the forest. Any questions? None? Good, let's get started. Now we need you to fill out these forms to get your scroll and gate number. Dismissed. Team 7 filled out the forms they were given and were then given an earth scroll. They walked toward their assigned gate, and after about 15 minutes of waiting they heard a horn sound and the gates open. They were jumping through the forest and eventually found a clearing where they decided to take a short break. They pulled out their water and each took a drink before resealing it away. Naruto then got up and went behind a tree to use the bathroom. He then came back before speaking, "Hey guys, wadash." He was cut off by Sasuke throwing a kunai at him, forcing him to dodge. "Whoa guys, it's me." Naruto tried to reason. Sasuke just rolled his eyes before responding, "Sure, I might believe you if that wasn't one of the worst attempts at a henge that I have ever seen. Naruto has 2 weapons pouches, not one, and you got his eyes wrong too." The now revealed fake Naruto tried to make a run for it but suddenly found himself unable to move as Hinata effectively shut him down with her modified Juken. Naruto then came walking back dragging the kids' teammates with him, and their scroll tucked underneath his arm. They noticed it was another Earth scroll. So unfortunately not the one they were looking for, but it was always good to have a spare, plus that was one less team that would be continuing to the finals. They got back on their way with Hinata using her Byakugan every so often to look for other teams. Hinata was about to do another sweep with her Byakugan when suddenly they were surrounded by 4 of the 5 Kumo teams present at the exams. Hinata and Sasuke flared their respective dijutsus while all 3 entered their fighting stances. One Kumo genin came out and spoke, "Surrender and we will promise you won't be harmed. Only taken back to our village and used to breed more of your KekkeiGenkai." While looking at Hinata with a lust-filled stare, Hinata shivered slightly while the boys glared before Naruto and Sasuke started laughing before Sasuke spoke up with a smart-ass tone. "So you want us to surrender willingly? To be taken back to your village for me and Naruto here to be milked for our seed and Hinata here subjugated to a fate worse than death?" Naruto started chuckling again at the absurdity of the request. The Kumo leader flushed in anger. "You think you're smart, you little shits? Well, let's see how smart you are when we make you watch us rape your little teammate after we beat you too." Attack! With Naruto, the 3 Leaf Genin were heavily outnumbered, but the dijutsus weren't considered the most powerful for nothing. Naruto found himself against 4 enemies who had surrounded him. He drew his sword as it glimmered in the light as the Kumo Nin all drew their respective blades. The leader of the Kumo Nin was also there fighting him. The Kumo leader spoke up, "After we kill you I'm going to take that blade as my own. I'd like to see you try." The blonde retorted before spinning in a circle while releasing flames from Shinryu. Despite their surprise 2 of the genin were able to escape the fiery ring, but the other 2 could be heard writhing in pain from within the flames. Disappointed that his attack didn't get all 4 of them, he slid into his sword stance. The first genin charged while the leader leapt back doing hand seals. Naruto charged wind through his sword and cut through his opponent's blade before cutting through the genin himself. The leader began to panic after seeing all of his allies cut down, launched his technique at the blonde sage. "Raiton, John!" The blast of lightning shot from the Kumo genin. It neared our favorite blonde, as the Kumo leader smirked seeing his technique about to hit, only for Naruto to stretch out his hand as the lightning technique was absorbed by Naruto, who was using his Preta path. The Kumo genin was too shocked to react to Naruto appear in front of him, and cut him in half. Naruto scoffed before he flicked the blood off his blade as he sheathed it, before sitting down to wait on his teammates. With Sasuke activated his Sharingan, and scanned the enemies while getting into the Uchiha Interceptor Fist. The 4 Kumo Nin charged him all at the same time. He jumped into the air avoiding the 4 Nin while going through hand signs before shouting, "Katon, Great Fire Ball Jutsu." 3 of the genin were able to get away, but 1 was caught in the large sphere of fire. Sasuke smirked, since had he not been training with Orochimaru, he never would have been able to make it large or fast enough to catch the guy. The remaining 3 genin glared at him as they regrouped. They appeared to be an original team if the way they seemed comfortable with each other was anything to go by. He got back into his Interceptor Fist style, and prepared to engage them in close-range combat. The 3 genin reached him simultaneously. One sent a punch to his head, second sent an uppercut toward his stomach, while the third sent a sliding kick toward his knees. Sasuke smirked as his Sharingan read their moves perfectly as he jumped over the second and third genin's attacks while redirecting the forced one's punch and kicking him in the face, sending him flying into a nearby tree, effectively knocking him out. After taking care of one, he backflipped away to get some distance from the remaining 2 genin. He immediately had to jump backward to avoid a lightning jutsu launched by one of the Kumo Nin. Upon landing, he had to immediately block a punch from the other genin. Sasuke used his other hand to unseal a Fuma shuriken and throw it at the Kumo genin. The Kumo nin's eyes widened at seeing the large shuriken sailing directly toward him. He barely had enough time to lean back and barely avoid being bisected by the large shuriken, though he missed the smirk on Sasuke's face. Sasuke then pulled on some wires as the shuriken disassembled, and the pieces all lodged into the Kumo genin's back. The Kumo genin coughed up blood as he collapsed. The last genin looked a bit shaken seeing his last teammate being taken down so gruesomely. He was so afraid he accidentally looked at Sasuke directly in his Sharingan. Vine suddenly wrapped around him as Sasuke calmly walked up to him and stabbed him in his temple, killing the genin, who then collapsed, his muscles no longer receiving any instruction to keep him up. Sasuke smirked at the idiocy of the genin for falling for such a simple genjutsu. Even if the Sharingan made it stronger, it was still a pretty basic one. He sighed, then began to calmly walk toward where he felt Naruto was. With Hinata, she was surrounded by 4 Kumo genin who were all leering at her lecherously. One of them decided to speak up. "Hey baby, if you cooperate we promise to go gentle," as he licked his lips. Hinata felt a shiver go up her spine, but quickly shook it off as she entered her modified gentle fist style that she liked to call the gentle fang, since it was a combination of gentle fist and the snake fighting style. The 4 genin charged at her, as she immediately jumped to avoid being surrounded. They pushed off the point where she was toward her new location. The first 2 genin reached her and tried to punch her, but he crouched and struck out, effectively shutting down both of their legs, and them as they were falling she disabled their arms. As the 2 genin fell, she was forced to backflip over a lightning jutsu that one of the genin tried to blindside her with. Though while she was still midair, the second one came down trying to dropkick her in her stomach, as she was unable to avoid. She knew she was going to be forced to use her new attack. She began to spin while shouting gentle step, protection of the 64 palms. The Kumo nin slammed into the dome, and was flung around by it, being shredded the whole way. He collapsed bloody and unconscious. The last genin was glaring at her. "You little bitch." Her last opponent yelled as he flipped through hand signs before shouting right on. Live wire jutsu. Seeing the 2 lines of electricity speeding toward her, she immediately jumped from her spot onto a tree and pushed off toward the Kumo genin as she launched a chakra-filled palm strike to his head, effectively destroying his frontal lobe, killing him instantly. She calmed her breathing as she walked to join her teammates. The 3 Jujutsu wielders were able to get to the tower with little to no trouble after they had taken out the Kumo genin. The only trouble that hindered them was a team of pathetically weak AIM team that tried to tire them out with a weak genjutsu, then tried to beat them with weak illusion clones. It took approximately 10 seconds for Hinata to find them with her Byakugan, and about another 10 for Naruto to pull them from the tree with Bansho Tenin and knock them out. They took their scroll just to make it even harder for them to move on, if they were even able to. They solved the riddle on the wall, and Naruto and Sasuke opened the scrolls only for them to begin smoking with seals covering them. Naruto immediately recognized them as summoning seals and tossed his away, Sasuke following suit, knowing his teammate probably had good reason for doing so. Soon a puff of smoke exploded from the seals, and after it cleared, Sasuke and Hinata immediately recognized their teacher from the academy, Iruka. Iruka looked quite stunned to see a team already enter the tower, considering that the competition had just started a few hours prior. "Yo," he said with a smile, "it's great to see a Konoha team finish so early. Gives me some great expectations for later." Naruto and Sasuke smirked in triumph, while Hinata blushed shyly at their old teacher's praise. The 3 days passed, and many other teams made their way to the tower. The only remaining Kumo team passed, along with the other Konoha genin teams. Kabuto's team included. Not like Naruto was surprised by that at all, considering he knew who Kabuto really was. The team from Suna also made it through with the creepy red head and makeup-wearing puppeteer. All the teams that had made it through were gathered in a large room that had 2 giant hands making a hand sign. Above it was a catwalk that went around almost the entire room. The teams all gathered in the center of the room before the Hokage began to speak. He said something about the Chunin exams being a substitute for war. Though Naruto wasn't really listening, as he found the whole lecture pretty boring, so he was just cleaning some dirt from his nails. Eventually a rather sickly-looking guy, who was introduced as Hate, with a katana strapped to his back, interrupted the Hokage and began to speak. "We did not expect so many of you to pass the last exam. Because of this we will need to hold a preliminary match before we have the actual tournament in order to filter out some of the weaker contestants, and so the important people won't be bored." A few of the genin, Sakura and Kiba, complained about the unfairness and that some people had just gotten there. Hate just glanced down at them for a second before continuing. "First I will ask if there is anyone who feels they cannot continue and would like to forfeit." Only Kabuto raised his hand, saying, "I took a beating in the forest, and I don't want to reopen my wounds, so I guess I'll be going." Hate nodded at the reason and signaled for a jonin to make sure he got out of the forest safely. "Now the rules are that if I end the match you are to stop or else you will be disqualified. Next is if your opponent surrenders you are to stop or else you will be disqualified. Killing is allowed although it is discouraged. When I call the match all fighting is to stop. Now we have even numbers so everyone will fight once. Winners will be allowed to participate in the finals." The genin all nodded at his answer as they all headed up to the catwalk to watch the upcoming fights. Names began cycling through on the computer screen before 2 names appeared, Kiba versus Karui. The 2 competitors smirked cockily before jumping over the rail and into the arena. They walked over to Hate and faced each other as Hate shouted, "Hajime." Karui immediately drew her sword before settling into her stance. Kiba grinned haughtily before speaking. Yo, girlie, don't you know that girls aren't supposed to have weapons? They're supposed to stay in the house and cook, take care of the house, he grinned lecherously, and if they're good you give them a reward. He finished by licking his lips and looking at her form lecherously. Karui's face turned red in anger as every man in the room face-palmed at Kiba's idiotic, not to mention highly sexist, statement that made him enemy number one of every female in the room as killing intent suddenly filled the room. Karui's hands began to shake as her knuckles turned white from clenching her sword as she began to channel lightning chakra through her blade. She sent some chakra to her legs to strengthen them before pushing off at high speeds toward the feral-looking boy. Kiba could barely blink before he saw the sword closing in on his face. He was barely able to duck in time before the sword sliced the top of his hood off. Kiba jumped back to gain distance from the enraged female just in time to avoid a vertical slash. He went through some hand seals as Akamaru jumped out from his jacket and shouted, "Ninpo, beat mimicry." He became more feral-looking as he gained beast claws and his canines extended. He then threw a pill toward Akamaru, and then in a puff of smoke there were two Kibas standing there. He got down on all fours before taking off at high speed toward his opponent. Karui dodged a right slash from Kiba's claws, before another Kiba appeared behind her and kicked her hard in the stomach, winding her a bit before she could recover. When she recovered, she immediately had to block Kiba's claws with her katana before being forced to jump away from a transformed Akamaru. Throwing some lightning-infused shuriken to gain some space from the beastly duo, she began hand signs for her next jutsu. She needed them to both get close to her so that she could use it to full effect. Kiba smirked as he also threw a smoke bomb towards Karui. After it detonated, it covered half the arena in smoke. Kiba and the transformed Akamaru jumped into the air and began spinning. A few moments later, Kiba and Akamaru, no longer transformed, flew out of the smoke covered in electrical burns and unconscious as Karui walked out, barely keeping herself upright before she collapsed from chakra exhaustion. Many were shocked at the result since everyone had thought that Kiba was about to win, only for Kiba to be knocked out. As the medics took the two away, Hate announced, since Kiba was the first to go unconscious, the winner is Karui from Kumo. The Kumo genin all cheered. Even if she was barely able to win, it was still a win. What happened in the smoke? Karui closed her eyes to enhance her other senses. She smirked when she realized Kiba was yelling as he was performing the attack, allowing her to predict much better when he was close enough. The only problem, however, was the dog. She knew her jutsu would use up the rest of her chakra, so she had to hope that they would attempt to finish it in one shot and both hit her simultaneously. When she decided he was close enough, which took all of a few seconds, she called out her technique, right on, discharge. As she finished, lightning erupted from her body in all directions, blasting the beastly duo that were coming at her. Back to present. The other Kumo members jumped in joy from the unexpected victory, while the people from Konoha had mixed feelings. They all were happy she knocked some sense back into Kiba, hopefully, but at the same time were sad that a comrade lost. To keep things moving, the computer cycled through names until they landed on Sakura and Ino. The following battle was so incredibly pathetic that it made some of the stronger people want to cry. The whole match was just a collection of flashbacks and fist fighting that was so pathetic that most civilians could have done better. Ino tried to capture Sakura with her mind transfer, but she was somehow able to break free due to her dual personality issue. In the end, the battle was a double knockout, which made everyone sigh in relief, as neither were prepared to enter the finals, let alone become a Chunin. The computer once again began going through names before landing on Hyuga Niji and Sabaka no Kankuro. The two walked down to the field, both with a confident swagger. Hate looked between them and then spoke. Are both participants ready? Receiving a nod from both in response, he started the match. Niji activated his Byakugan before speaking. Get out of those bandages and fight. Kankuro was shocked before he scowled and jumped out. How could you tell that wasn't the real me? Niji gave a cocky smirk before simply saying, you cannot deceive my eyes. They can see through any attempt at deception. Scowling, Kankuro broke the disguise on Crow before sending it to attack Niji so he couldn't get close. Niji simply ducked the bladed arm and maneuvered behind the puppet before seemingly striking the air behind it. Some of those who are unaware of what the Byakugan could do thought that he had missed, but they were shocked when the puppet then fell to the ground useless. The match soon ended as Niji charged the still shell-shocked Kankuro and delivered many debilitating Juken blows. The puppet user was then taken for medical attention as the computer once again began to cycle through names. The computer stopped on Tenten and Sabaka no Temari. The two stepped onto the field before the match began. The match was pretty one-sided for the most part, as no matter what Tenten threw at Temari, she just blasted it away with her fan. The match ended when Temari got bored and trapped Tenten in a whirlwind of razor-sharp wind blades. As the names once again began to cycle through before landing on Shikamaru and Yoroi Akato. As Hate began the match, Yoroi immediately charged at Shikamaru and in a display that disgusted almost everyone in the small arena dislocated all his joints and wrapped Shikamaru up. He then spoke to the shadow user, give up or I'll snap your neck. Shikamaru's teammates looked worried as Shikamaru just breathed out a troublesome before looking back at the man currently giving him the world's most disturbing bear hug and said try it. Angry at the kids thought that he didn't have the guts tried, but then realized he couldn't move. What he hadn't seen was Shikamaru make a rat hand sign right before he was wrapped up. Shikamaru then took out a kunai with Akato mimicking his actions and put it up to the dislocated boy's throat. Since Akato didn't have anyone's head by his shoulder, he was the only one at risk, making him surrender. Up in the stands, many of the more experienced ninja were wondering how he could have been so stupid as to charge a Nara clan member head-on without taking precautions from their shadows. The next match was revealed to be Hinata Hyuga vs Omo. The two went down to the stage. Naruto and even Sasuke and Kakashi were a little put off by the sheer rage the normally cute and innocent Hyuga was putting off. 1. Back in the stand, Omo was about to go on a tirade about what might happen before he was slapped in the back of the head by a recently recovered Karui. "Don't you dare start going though, worst-case scenarios that we both will never happen," said the hot-headed Kunoichi. But what if she holds a grudge against the Cloud due to the death of a family member? And what if she was involved somehow and the son of the man who was killed now despises her, and any further ranting was cut off by Karui's foot hitting his back effectively, shoving him over the rail and face first into the arena. He then recovered and moved to the center of the arena where a very angry Hyuga awaited him. As the match started, Hinata immediately charged the young Kumo-nin, barely giving him enough time to jump back to avoid having his tenketsu closed. He quickly flashed through a few hand signs before once again jumping away from the enraged Hyuga female before calling out, "Right on, shuriken!" Several shuriken made from lightning shot from his hands. However, through a deadly combination of her Byakugan and her natural flexibility, she managed to weave through and avoid every energy shuriken without losing almost any speed. Shocked, he was unable to completely avoid Hinata's assault, but was luckily only totally disabled in his left arm. He knew he was now at a disadvantage against the Hyuga, and he could no longer use jutsu, which would mean he had to fight her at close range. Sighing, seeing it as his only choice despite it seeming hopeless, he pulled his katana from his sheath, no longer able to keep the battle range like he had originally planned. He charged lightning churka through his katana to increase its cutting power, along with allowing it to deliver debilitating electric shocks at contact. Seeing this with her Byakugan, she decides to end this with her newest move that Orochimaru helped her perfect. Taking a firm stance and placing both of her palms facing forward with the left partially outstretched and her right kept closer to her stomach, too. As she does this, she closes her eyes and begins to carefully mold her chakra. Seeing her preparing for what looks like a powerful attack, Omoi begins to charge, hoping to end it with one slash. The second he got within 3 feet of Hinata, her eyes opened and she thrust her hand out and shouted, 8 trigrams, empty fist. A blast of pressurized air shoots from her hands, nailing Omo straight on, sending him flying back and cracking the wall. Seeing Omo knocked out, Hate called the match winner Hinata. The Leaf Genin were all happy for the young heiress as they all cheered, but were all a little shocked at her violence. The foreign shinobi were all indifferent to her win except for the Cloud Ninja, who were all shocked that Omoi was taken down so easily, while Karui was wondering if Omoi's ramblings were actually spot on for once. At this point, Naruto was getting a bit anxious waiting for his match. The computer cycled through names again before landing on Choji Akimichi and Naruto Uzumaki. The second his name appeared, Naruto jumped the railing and ran to his starting point. Knowing how strong Naruto was after seeing him take down some of the better people in his class made him nervous about fighting him. Seeing his student's nerves, Asuma bent down and whispered into his ear, "If you win, I'll treat you to all-you-can-eat barbecue." The second Asuma uttered the word barbecue, Choji roared in determination as, like Naruto, he vaulted over the railing and ran to his starting position. Hate chuckled a little bit at their eagerness before coughing violently. After he recovered, he said, "Hajime," and jumped out of the way. Given his K, Choji immediately jumped back and said, "Ninpo, expansion technique," causing his entire body to swell. Then his head and appendages tucked into his body and chakra shot out, causing him to pick up large amounts of speed. Seeing the speeding meat tank, Naruto jumped up into the air over the top. In midair he flipped and pulled out a few Senbon before he threw them at Choji. Due to the FA Big Bone Boy's rapid spinning, the Senbon were just knocked away without doing any damage. Naruto touches back down on the ground before seeing Choji turn around for another charge. Making a large leap back, he got it so that he positioned himself right in front of one of the arena's walls. Seeing Choji getting close, he quickly throws a kunai into the air before quickly substituting with it, making Choji smash into the wall without getting his target. The wall slowed Choji's rolling to an almost complete stop, giving Naruto the opportunity he needed to quickly launch Senbon from his wrist-mounted launcher. The Senbon found their mark and stuck into the plump boy's back. It took a few seconds longer due to his increased size, but just as he was preparing to charge Naruto again, he felt his vision waver before he fell into blissful unconsciousness. Hate called the match in Naruto's favor as Naruto pulled out a small syringe containing the antidote and injected into his ex-opponent before the medical staff took the young Akimichi away. The remaining fighters were all getting anxious as they saw the computer start going through names again. Eventually, after what seemed like an eternity to the competitors, the computer landed on Shino Aburame and Yujito. The two competitors walked down to the arena as Hate looked at the two young shinobi before shouting his traditional Hajime. His insects having sensed her large amount of chakra before and knowing that she could easily overpower him. Knowing this, he threw down a smoke, hoping to provide himself with some cover. Seeing this, Yujito was but on guard. Feeling a chakra signature behind her, she smirked and immediately pulled out a kunai and stabbed it into Shino, who was behind her. However, her smirk faltered, and instead of bleeding and falling to the ground, he exploded into bugs which immediately latched themselves to her skin. Many of the Konoha genin, though Shino had this one in the bag before all his insects all collapsed dead without warning as a light blue glow came off her skin. She quickly flipped several before shouting, "Katon, mouse hairball!" Several fireballs made from hair, covered in blue fire, and in the shape of mice, charged at Shino. Seeing the danger, Shino attempted to get out of the way of the rodent-shaped fireballs, but the fireballs had other ideas as they seemed to follow him around the small arena. Suddenly, Shino dissolved into insects that all scattered, thoroughly confusing the fireballs, causing them to crash into each other and the ground. Looking around the arena, Yujito was unable to find him, leaving only one other location available. Jumping onto the wall, she was barely able to avoid a horde of insects that exploded from the ground around her previous location. Gritting her teeth in frustration at how elusive her enemy was being, she decided to stop messing around. Going through many hand signs, she finally finished just as Shino appeared again to try and attack her with his bugs. Taking a deep breath, she launched her most powerful fire technique, Katon, Colossus Demon Cat Hellfire Ball. The ball of fire was massive and in the shape of a large two-tailed cat as it detonated into the ground with the force of a bomb, almost blowing the whole arena floor to bits. After the dust cleared, they could all see a knocked out and singed Shino. The medics then came in and carried him out of the arena as Yujito joined her teammates in the catwalk above the arena. The computer once again began cycling through names before the results finally came up as Sasuke Uchiha vs Masumi. Sasuke grinned at finally having his chance to fight and show his strength. After receiving a good luck from his teammates, he made his way to the arena. Sasuke shivered as suddenly as he was making to the arena. Suddenly the reason for the chill revealed itself as he heard the obnoxious screams of Sakura and Ino, who both somehow magically healed when Sasuke stepped up to fight. The powers of a fangirl truly are terrifying. Ignoring them, or at least trying to, he turned and faced his opponent. Narrowing his eyes as he stared down his opponent, trying to discern what kind of fighter he was. Once the match started, he ran straight at Sasuke. Activating his Sharingan, he was able to notice that his opponent's hands were glowing. Figuring that since his opponent was charging, that the glow must require close contact to work properly. Running at his fellow genin, he ducked in and got within his opponent's guard before, and slapped his arms away at the elbow, all at a speed that left Masumi shocked. Taking advantage of his opponent's shock, Sasuke delivered a few strong punches to Masumi's chest before kicking him in the chin, sending him into the air. Jumping into the air and kicking him up before delivering one final kick that smashed him into the ground. Seeing that Masumi was out cold, he declared Sasuke the winner. After walking back to the catwalk, the two final contestants went out to fight. Gaara floated down on a platform of sand, emitting an enormous amount of bloodlust. Lee shouted about youth before leaping the rail down to the stadium and running to the starting position. This battle will basically be the same as in canon, so if you don't want to read it again you can skip it and not miss much. But I'm still writing it since I'm not that lazy. Hate shouted for them to start, and Lee exploded from his spot as sand burst from Gaara's gourd. Lee was behind Gaara in an instant and throwing a kick to the sand shinobi's back. The kick, however, was immediately blocked by a wall of sand that formed. After several attempts to hit Gaara, all of which failed, Lee jumped back away from the homicidal Jinchuriki. Guy then shouted, "Lee! Take them off!" Lee looked at his sensei shocked. "But you said only to do that when I'm protecting my precious people." "I'll allow it this time," Guy responded with his patented good guy pose. Jumping on top of the large statue of the rat seal, pulling out 2 bars from under his leg warmers. The sand ninja scoffed at him, thinking that taking off a few pounds would change anything when facing Gaara. However, the entire stadium were all left gaping in shock when the bars hit the ground, each forming craters where they landed. Lee gave a large smile now that he could move more freely, and immediately shot off at Gaara even faster than he had before. Gaara's sand couldn't react in time and Gaara was launched into a nearby wall. The sand shinobi present were all gaping at the fact someone actually managed to land a hit on Gaara. Gaara stood back up much to the shock of Lee, but everyone noticed that Gaara's face was starting to crack and fall away, revealing that Gaara had a layer of sand over his skin, acting as armor. Taking advantage of the fact that Gaara was still a bit stunned from the impact, Lee ran at Gaara and kicked him into the air, activating the first gate and delivering a volley of kicks at Gaara. He faltered for a moment when the strain the gates were putting on his muscles pained him. After kicking the sand shinobi, he wrapped him up in bandages and drove his head into the ground. Jumping back panting heavily, he looked on in horror as the Gaara he thought he beat dissolved into sand, with the real Gaara coming out of the ground. Due to the strain that was put on his muscles, along with Gaara becoming much more offensive due to taking a hit, Lee soon found his arm and leg caught in sand. Gaara looked on coldly as he mutters, "Sand funeral," as the sand crushed his arm and leg. The sand began creeping over the rest of his body before it was blasted away by Guy. Gaara looked angry and confused at the man blocking him from slaying the green-wearing shinobi. "Why are you protecting him?" Gaara rasped out as Guy looked at him with serious eyes. "Because he's my dear student." Gaara seemed to scoff before turning around and making his way back up to the platform. The medics quickly came and carted the mutilated genin to the med wing. All the remaining genin were called back down into the arena. Enko walked down with a box in her hands. "All right, maggots, come and take a paper, form the box and read the number out loud, then once everyone in finished you will all be escorted out of the forest." The remaining genin came down and drew a number from the box and read them off. Naruto 1, Hinata 4, Sasuke 6, Niji 2, Gaara 5, Temari 8, Kari 7, Yujito 3, Shikamaru 9. Hate then spoke, "The following matches shall be First round, Naruto Uzumaki vs Niji Hyuga. Second round, Hinata Hyuga vs Yujito Ni. Third round, Gaara no Sabaka vs Sasuke Uchiha. Fourth round, Karui vs Temari no Sabaku. And finally Shikamaru Nara shall face the winner of round 1. The Hokage then spoke up, this the conclusion of the preliminary exam. You have 1 month to train before meeting up at the stadium in exactly 30 days. Good luck. Naruto blearily opened up his eyes to the morning sunlight that was peeking through his shades and happened to get him right in the eye. Grumbling that on his last and only day off before his training for the Chunin exam, he was woken up by the sun that was glaring through his cheap blinds, muttering curses under his at being too lazy and cheap to go and buy and install some new ones. After slowly making his way out of his bed, he managed to get showered and ready for his day. Sasuke, he knew, had been taken by Kakashi to practice using his new Sharingan eyes along with learning a technique to pierce through Gaara's sand. Hinata didn't have the greatest relationship with her father since she was corrupting the sacred gentle fist that had been passed down in their clan for generations, with her style that accommodated her body style more. For that reason Anko was helping her learn more about poisons and how to fight better with her new style. Naruto visibly scoffed at the idiocy of some of those big clans sometimes. They tried to have her branded at one point. In order to do so there must be another, more skill there. Niji was out of the question to challenge her since he already had a caged bird seal on his head. This left only Hanabi, who could never defeat her older sister in a fair match as she was now. Naruto knew that the main family were training Hanabi relentlessly to surpass her older sister, but all the main family put together still couldn't compare to having the genius of the Sannin Orochimaru as a teacher. He began to walk aimlessly around the village and ended up in the bathhouse area. Now Naruto was no expert on bathhouses, but he was pretty sure that they were not supposed to have old men with spiky white hair standing on an abnormally large toad pressing his face against the fence. He face-palmed when he realized who it was before deciding to have a little fun. He hadn't started training with his newest path much yet, so he didn't want to risk blowing the entire bathhouse to the moon. So he went with his Deva path, and used a gentle Shinra Tensei to make the wall to the bathhouse fall down, revealing the pervert to the world. He hit himself first, of course, before he watched as his godfather God mauled mercilessly by about a dozen angry kunoichi, and even a few civilian women. Though now he was confused about something, not their reaction. He totally understood that. But how did totally naked women without any clothing, towels, or anything at all suddenly obtain kunai, for the kunoichi, and frying pans, civilian women, to use against his godfather? He spent about another 5 minutes contemplating this strange occurrence before realizing he should probably scrape what was left of his godfather of the sidewalk as to avoid anyone accidentally ruining their shoes with his blood. After dragging him off sidewalk, he proceeded to throw him into a cold lake. Jiraiya suddenly jumped out, totally healed I might add, something else that confused Naruto greatly, cursing and sputtering about cold water. After looking up and he realized who was in front of him before exclaiming, "Gaki! Why the hell did you throw me into this water?" Naruto rolled his eyes at his pervert of a godfather before he responded, "To wake you back up since you had been turned into pervert paste by those women who caught you peeking on them in the bath." Jiraiya quickly covered Naruto's mouth to avoid any women from hearing him and starting another round of Beat the Pervert. "Not so loud, brat, you never know who's listening." Naruto pushed Jiraiya's hand off him before giving him a deadpan stare before changing the subject. "Did you find any information about the new path I awakened? I want to learn more about it so I can use it as a trump in the finals." Jiraiya grinned before he pulled a scroll out of his sleeve and tossed it to Naruto. "All the information I was able to gain about it is within that scroll. I'd stick around to help, but unfortunately I recently was contacted one of my contacts in my spy network, so I'll leave it to Orochi team to help you with it. I gave him a copy of it as well. Until I can check on you again, Naruto. See ya." The Toad Sage then disappeared in a puff of smoke, showing that he was reverse summoned somewhere. Rolling his eyes at his godfather's antics, he opened the scroll and began to read. The next day he showed up at the training ground that a snake had come and told him last night. Instead of just his sensei in the clearing, he saw another person with him. As he got closer, he realized that it was the new white-haired bone KekkeiGenkai user that his sensei had rescued during one of his spy missions to Kiri. The teen was completely dedicated to his sensei to a point where some might even question his sanity. His name was Kimimaro Kagaya, the last known user of the Dead Bone Pulse bloodline, and someone who had become a close friend to Naruto in the recent weeks. He entered the training field where the two were there waiting for him. He called out, "Yo sensei! I'm ready for training in my new path." "But why is Kimimaro here?" Orochimaru opened a scroll, and Naruto could tell it was the copy of the scroll that Jiraiya gave to him. According to Jiraiya's information on this path, it is mostly body modification. I brought Kimimaro-kun with me today since the Dead Bone Pulse is also body modification if slightly different. Combine it with my extensive knowledge about KekkeiGenkai in general, and we should be able to get this little power figured out. Yash! Let's get started!" Naruto shouted in excitement. "First, Naruto-kun, I want you to spar with Kimimaro and see how he uses his abilities to fight, and see if you can't recreate any of it with your Azura Path abilities. Once you have accomplished this, we will begin with creating your own unique abilities and techniques." Nodding, Naruto got into a fighting stance before him and Kimimaro decided to begin their fight. And for my own sake I'm gonna skip the rest of the training and go right into the exams now. Kimimaro lovers, don't worry, I'll discuss some of the training in flashback form to reveal how he came up with some of his combos. I mainly just wanted to get Kimimaro in there since he will start playing a bigger role later down the road. On with the story. For blood and glory, Naruto looked up at the large stadium that would soon be housing the final round of the Chunin exams. He walked in and after signing in he made his way up to the participants' platform to await for the matches to start. When he got there, only he, Hinata, and surprisingly Shikamaru had arrived. Seeing that Shikamaru was in the middle of a pre-competition nap, he went over to Hinata to talk until the contest started. As they talked, more competitors made their way into the stadium. When all the contestants were called down to the stadium floor, they noticed that Sasuke was the only one who wasn't there yet. Hinata and Naruto sighed and hoped Kakashi's laziness doesn't get their teammate disqualified from the competition. After they were introduced to the audience, Hate asked for all participants other than the first two to return to the observation platform. Naruto and Neji walked to their respective starting positions and waited for the rest of the competitors to clear the arena. Neji turned to Naruto. Surrender, fate has decided that I shall be the victor this day. Naruto simply scoffed before signaling for Hate to start the match. Hate looked at both genin, and seeing them nod began the match. Hajime. Neji immediately charged Naruto and threw a palm thrust to the center of his chest. Naruto jumped away in an attempt to gain distance from the prodigy of the Hyuga clan. Neji, however, wouldn't allow the blonde any breathing room. He immediately charged to continue his assault. Not wanting to have to resort to his Deva Path abilities this early in the competition, Naruto flipped through a few quick hand seals before shouting, "Wind style! Great breakthrough!" As a massive gust of powerful wind burst from his mouth, Neji was caught by the blast due to his close range and was blasted painfully into the wall on the other end of the arena. Breaking out of his daze, he immediately jumped to the side as a drilling air bullet impacted into his previous location. Realizing he had lost his range advantage, shifted into a defensive positioning in order to try and regain the advantage and force Naruto back into close range. Naruto, knowing that he needed to keep his distance from the fate-obsessed Naruto, launched another wind style. Great breakthrough at the wide-eyed teen. Neji sked in annoyance, as he realized he had to play one of his aces in order to get the blonde shinobi to get close enough. Seeing the large wall of wind quickly approaching, Neji began to spin while releasing his chakra from his tenketsu. The audience, at first, thought that Neji was gonna take another serious hit, but were shocked when they heard Kaiten, and the wind break around him like a powerful wave hitting a sturdy rock on the shore. Naruto gritted his teeth in annoyance. Sure, he could always just blast him to Kingdom Come with a Shinra Tensei, but that would end things too quickly for his liking. Realizing that his only other choice would be to use Preta Path to absorb the chakra, but he would have to get close to do that, putting him within Neji's ideal range. Seeing no other choice, Naruto withdrew Shinryu and sent a wave of flame at Neji, who used Kaiten to block the attack. As Naruto was about to charge his Preta Path into the blade and cut through the Kaiten by relieving it of chakra, the Kaiten burst, and Neji came flying out. 8 trigrams 64 palms. Naruto cursed, realizing that it had been a trap to get him close, could do nothing but try to minimize the damage of the strikes. 2 palms. Naruto was able to block one with Shinryu, but the other hit him in the chest. 4 palms, 8 palms. Naruto was having more and more difficulty blocking the rapidly increasing strikes. 16 palms, 32 palms. At this point, Naruto couldn't keep up anymore and was sent sprawling by Neji, who finished with a shout of 8 trigrams, 64 palms. Neji, seeing Naruto sprawled on the ground, looked up to the proctor and said, "He won't be getting up." Called him ah. He was cut off by the sound of laughter, specifically coming from Naruto. Ha 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 ha. You think that I would have fought you without something to counteract my tenketsu being blocked? As he stood up totally fine. How I executed that move perfectly. You shouldn't even be able to move right now, screamed Neji in denial that his trump card was just shrugged off, as if they had just been a series of taps. Naruto grinned and then made his arm into a robotic limb. It's quite simple. My Azura Path allows me to change my body to form mechanical armor. I simply transformed my ribs to a steel plate, and my arms to mechanical ones. This removed or blocked almost all of my tenketsu, making your attack near harmless. He was silently thanking Kimimaro for his help in learning how to change his bones into different shapes. Neji grit his teeth as he was placed in an unfavorable position, knowing that the same trick wouldn't work again. Naruto quickly channeled minute amounts of Kyuubi chakra to reopen the few tenketsu Neji was able to close before he was able to activate his Azura Path. Neji, not wanting to lose once again, charged the blonde. No longer wanting to play around with Neji, Naruto launched a series of missiles from his arm. After detonating, it revealed a panting Neji in the center, with markings that made everyone realize that he was able to use Kaiten to avoid damage, but he had to expend most of his chakra in order to protect himself from the damage. Neji's Byakugan was deactivated due to his low levels of chakra and his own exhaustion. Not wanting to spend any more energy than required, Naruto shined behind Neji and knocked him out with a quick chop to the back of his neck. The proctor came and checked Neji's body before shouting, "Winner, Uzumaki Naruto." The crowd erupted in cheers for the blonde. As he waved and made his way back to the contestant platform, he was greeted by a hug from his female teammate, who congratulated him for his win before she realized she was still hugging him and blushed before stepping back. Naruto smiled and thanked her while thinking, she looks kinda cute like that. Wait, what? Where did that come from? She's just a teammate, and a good friend. Stop thinking weird thoughts. Sure, Kit, whatever floats your boat. Kurama chuckled within his cage. Shaking himself out of his thoughts, Naruto wished Hinata good luck on her match as she made her way down to the ring. She blushed before thanking him and jumping down to the arena. Up in the Kage booth, the Kages were discussing the match. TCH, I was hoping to see the blonde brat use more of his Rinnegan abilities, grumbled the Raikage. Hiruzen chuckled at his fellow Kage. Naruto doesn't like relying too heavily on his Rinnegan, specifically his Deva path. He says it ends the battles too quickly, and just pointing at people and sending them flying isn't very fun. This time it was the Kazekage who spoke. He is very skilled, but my son Gaara shall win this tournament. The Raikage snorted. Nonsense, Yujito will be the victor. She is one of our most promising genin, and her squad has been trained by my brother himself. This caused the other Kage's eyebrows to rise slightly. Oh? Killer Bee took on students? This next match should be rather interesting since Hinata is one of Orochimaru's students and our most promising up-and-coming kunoichi. The Kazekage smiled. Then this next match should prove most interesting. Her face darkened, however, when she saw the Kumo headband on her opponent. Not wanting to waste any time, she told the proctor to start the match. Yujito's eyes narrowed at the Hyuga girl for what she did to her teammate in the preliminary round. Knowing of the Hyuga's deadly taijutsu, she jumped back before shouting, "Katan, mouse hairball." Just like in her fight with Shinu, several mouse-shaped hairballs cloaked in a bluish fire were launched at Hinata. Narrowing her now activated Byakugan, she charged chakra to her hands as she sped forward. Cloaking her hands in a bluish chakra, she charged straight forward. Seeing the fireballs about to hit her, she completed the final stage of her new jutsu as the chakra on her hands transformed into what looked like lion heads and called out, "Gentle step, twin lion fists." She punched out the fireballs, her new technique stealing the chakra from them as she continued on her path straight for the female blonde. Jinchuriki 1. Yujito was slightly shocked seeing her favorite jutsu so easily defeated, as if she was simply swatting away flies. Adapting, she saw that she was only seconds away. She channeled some of Matabi's chakra to extend and sharpen her nails for close-range combat. The fight was truly something to behold. Both females possessed near-inhuman flexibility. Every jab, kick, punch, thrust was evaded or blocked. It almost looked like a dance. Eventually, due to her advantage of having her Byakugan, Hinata was able to land a solid blow to the Kumo girl's stomach, sending her flying. Yujito stood up, coughing up some blood. Kitten, be careful, that attack did more than just steal some of your chakra. It also attacked your internal organs. I was able to heal the damage, but be careful. 2. Nodding and thanking her Biju for the information, she realized that she needs to stay away from this girl. Hinata grinned when she saw Yujito stand back up. 3. And immediately charged towards her to continue her assault. Yujito would have none of it, however, as she unleashed a large ball of blue fire at Hyuga girl, who quickly rolled out of the way only for Yujito to be right in front of her, with a blue flaming fist. The fist impacted with Hinata only for her to erupt in water. Amizu Bunshin? When? Up in stands, many people were asking the same thing. Enko decided to speak up. When the Kumo chick shot the fireball, she made a Mizu Bunshin to distract her. Since she could see past the flame with her Byakugan, she could tell Yujito was coming around to blindside her. She smirked before adding, Hinata's about to finish this. Immediately after the Mizu Bunshin burst, Hinata burst out of the ground, hands still in the lion-shaped chakra shrouds, with a cry of 8 trigrams 64 palms. Due to her shock, Yujito could do nothing as strike after debilitating strike hit her. 2 palms, 4 palms, 8 palms. Yujito was coughing up blood at this point, but Hinata didn't let up. 16 palms, 32 palms, 8 trigrams 64 palms. With a final powerful strike, Yujito was sent flying into the arena wall, making a large dent. Kitten, you have to use my power if you want to win. Growling lightly at not being able to win with her own power, Yujito's body began to take on an orangey glow. Raikage, are you insane? You sent a Jinchuriki to a rival village's Chunin exam. The Hokage yelled while the Kazekage was just whistling innocently in the background, hoping to avoid having the professor's wrath turned on him. The Raikage grunted. The Chunin exams are meant to project strength. What better way to project strength than with a Jinchuriki? You had your Rinnegan boy competing, and Yujito was the only eligible shinobi that stood a chance against him. Hiruzen sighed and just prayed that Hinata would come out of this okay. Back in the arena, Hinata was panting, having deactivated her lion fists to save chakra. She knew she was in deep trouble. She was almost out of chakra, and that last attack took a lot out of her physically. She refused to give up though. She would show this Kumo bitch what it meant to mess with the Hyuga. Entering a defensive stance to conserve energy, Hinata waited for the Kumo Nin's charge. Yujito was now covered in an orange chakra cloak with 2 triangles of chakra on her head that looked like ears and a lanky energy tail like a cat would have. Her nails and fangs had also increased in length, and her eyes looked more feral. Hinata tensed her muscles to react for when Yujito attacked. Yujito crouched and down like a cat and pounced. Hinata was unprepared for just how much speed the blonde-haired kunoichi gained. She was hit with a devastating punch to the stomach as she coughed out blood and was sent flying to the other end of the arena. She never impacted a wall or floor as Yujito appeared next to her again and delivered a powerful kick that sent her crashing into the ground. Yujito was about to deliver a punch to the down and unconscious girl when an invisible force sent her flying into a way. Medics rushed out and put Hinata on a stretcher and took her away as Hate called the match in her favor. In the contestant booth, Naruto stood with his hair shadowing his eyes and his palm outstretched into the middle of the arena. Everyone knew that he had been the one to stop Yujito even though he had never moved from his position. He then quickly rushed out of the participant area and sprinted toward the medic room to check on Hinata. On his way down he was intercepted by a nurse who blocked him at the entrance. "Let me through. I need to check on Hinata-chan," yelled Naruto, not even noticing the chan he added to the end of her name. "Calm down, she's going to be fine. Just some internal bleeding and some fractured bones. Nothing a bit of medical ninjutsu and some rest can't fix. She is going to be sore for a few days though, so make sure she doesn't train too hard." Naruto sighed, sad that he couldn't see her but accepting that she will be fine in a few days. With this information he begrudgingly made his way back to the platform. Arriving back at the platform he was just in time to see Karui get blasted into a wall unconscious with numerous cuts covering her body. "Winner, Temari no Sabaku." Temari puffed her chest out confidently as she made her way back to the balcony where the other competitors were without a scratch. From what Naruto got from Shikamaru, it was pretty one-sided due to Temari being able to overpower all of Karui's lightning techniques with her wind and that Karui wasn't fast enough to get in close. He also found out that Sasuke's match had been pushed to last on the Kazekage's request since he wanted to be able to say that his son defeated Sasuke in single combat, not Gaara one cause his opponent failed to show up. Understanding the reasons and the fact that Sand would get more recognition for defeating a member or the famous Uchiha clan, if he is able to, that is. Shikamaru forfeited since he knew he couldn't defeat Naruto since he could just absorb the chakra from his shadow, making it effectively useless. Hate called down Sasuke and Gaara once again. Right as Hate was about to disqualify Sasuke, a swirl of leaves appeared on the field which cleared to reveal Sasuke and Kakashi. Kakashi rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. "Sorry we're late. He's not disqualified, is he?" Everyone sighed at the masked Nin. "No, you guys are just on time. In fact, your opponent is starting to get antsy, so hurry." Sasuke took his place in front of Gaara and Hate began the match. Gaara immediately sent a wave of sand at the Sasuke who expected him to do that and jumped out of the way. Sasuke activated his Sharingan and flipped through a few hand signs before unleashing a powerful fireball at the gourd-carrying redhead. The sand automatically came up and blocked the fireball before the redhead could even feel any heat. Scoffing, he sent tendrils of sand to hold down the Sharingan wielder. Sasuke, not wanting to be caught by the sand, substituted with a log and appeared right behind Gaara. Sasuke lashed out with a kick at Gaara's back only for it to be blocked by sand. Sasuke kept trying to land a blow but all his best efforts seemed to be for naught as he couldn't manage to get past the Sunanin's defenses. Gaara sent another wave of sand at the black-haired Avenger, who jumped away to avoid being caught up in the sand. Taking out a kunai, Sasuke charged lightning chakra through it, and charged at Gaara once again. He was able to slice through the tendrils and defenses and was able to score a hit on Gaara. Looking where he slashed, he knew it was shallow, but he thought there would at least be blood before he saw the sand falling from the wound and remember his skin-layered armor. Gaara, seeing that his defense had been breached, if barely, grew concerned now that his opponent found a way past his sand. He surrounded himself in a dome of sand with an eye on top watching and tracking Sasuke. Seeing his opponent surround himself in a dome of sand, Sasuke took this as an opportunity to prepare his ace. Sasuke ran up the side of one of the arena walls and proceeded to go through a multitude of hand signs before a crackling sound was heard across the stadium as people saw the lightning gather around his right hand. Grabbing his right arm with his left to stabilize it, Sasuke charged down the wall, allowing gravity to increase his speed. All Sunanin were a bit worried at this point, as they all knew what Gaara wrapping himself in sand meant. People were on the edge of their seats as Sasuke neared the sand dome with Chidori in hand. The second his hand impacted the dome, no one breathed. Suddenly the silence was broken. What is this warm feeling? Blood? My blood? My blood! Up in the Kage booth, the Kazekage cursed, and immediately jumped into action. Gold dust shot toward Gaara, who had just emerged with half of his body looking like some kind of bipedal tanuki. The gold dust quickly subdued the insane preteen as everyone looked confused about what just happened. After Gaara had been suppressed, the Kazekage put his hand on the back of his head and sheepishly said, "Sorry everyone." Gaara gets kinda freaked out when he sees his blood since he's never been injured before. Gaara forfeits, so please continue. 4. Everyone's sweat dropped as the Kazekage takes his son out of the arena while being in a cocoon of gold dust with only his head exposed. "Sen, I've calmed down, can you let me out now?" complained Gaara from his golden prison. "No, consider this punishment for losing your head," responded the Kazekage. Gaara frowned, but realizing arguing would get him nowhere, just adopted a neutral expression. A second sweat drop appeared on everyone at the interaction between the unstable child and the Kage. Well, almost everyone. Naruto was too busy thinking about how big the pore would have to be to produce a drop of sweat that size, but that's a topic for later. Hate announced that after a 30-minute intermission to allow for the competitors to rest before their next match, the second round/semifinal would begin, the order being Match 1, Naruto Uzumaki vs Yujito Ni, and Match 2, Sasuke Uchiha vs Temari no Sabaku. During the intermission, Naruto and Sasuke went to check up on Hinata again. This time they were allowed to see her, but she was asleep, so they let her get her sleep. Orochimaru was also there checking up on her as well. After being assured by the doctors that she was receiving the best possible care and would make a full recovery, they returned to the participants' booth. After stretching to make sure their bodies were loose for their matches, Naruto was called down to the arena to begin his match. Taking out Shinryu, Naruto jumped down to the arena and faced Yujito. His eyes narrowed at the person who had hurt his Hinata-chan. Did he just say his Hinata? He shook it from his mind so it would not distract him in the middle of the fight. Deciding he would end this quickly, Naruto pointed his sword toward his fellow Jinchuriki. Kid, just as a warning, since you're still young and mastering your Deva path, if she has learned how to enter her second stage transformation, she may be able to overcome your Shinra Tensei depending on how powerful you make it. 5. As the tails increase, it becomes harder to control. Since she is only the two tails Jinchuriki, she may well be able to enter her second stage, and there are too many people around to use that, so be careful. Nodding at Kurama, Naruto readied himself as Hate started the match. Naruto charged at Yujito and swung Shinryu while releasing a large amount of wind-powered flames. Seeing this, Yujito immediately channeled some Biju chakra before unleashing a large ball of blue fire which clashed with Naruto's, causing a large explosion in the middle of the arena. Yujito knew she needed to start off going all out if she wanted to have a chance at winning this. She was forced to play too many cards that she didn't want to play in her last match, which ended up being more difficult than anticipated. Channeling her Biju chakra, she lengthened and strengthened her nails and charged Naruto through the smoke of flames, most of which she was immune to. Though Naruto clearly expected this, as she found herself changing direction mid-air as she impacted into the wall harshly. Thankfully, some Doton users had come during the intermission and patched up all the damage done, so there was less risk of being blasted completely out of the arena. Seeing his Shinra Tensei succeed, Naruto proceeded to test her strength and speed by sending 3 clones with the Rinnegan after her. Due to her cloak healing her, Yujito recovered quickly just in time to fight the clones, dispatching them with relative ease. Naruto frowned as he saw what happened and gained their memories after they dispelled. She was in a two-tailed cloak stage. He needed to finish this before she went into her second stage. Absorbing the flames on the ground into his sword, he noticed that for a second the golden dragon on Shinryu flashed blue for a second before turning back to gold. Deciding to think more on this later, since Yujito looked ready to go again. Stabbing Shinryu into the ground for a second, Naruto flipped through several hand seals before he unleashed a storm of wind blades at the Cloud Kunoichi. Seeing the wind attack, she immediately countered with a fire attack which completely consumed the wind blades. Grinning as the now wind-enhanced wind attack was barreling its way towards Naruto as a giant wall of flame until the fire just dispersed, with Naruto just standing there, holding his sword his out pointing towards her, gritting her teeth in frustration over that damn chakra absorption ability of his. She tried to engage him in taijutsu only to be once again blasted into the wall by an unseen force. Naruto spoke, "Surrender. Jutsu are not effective against me, and you cannot approach me to engage me in taijutsu." "Give up!" Gritting her teeth, Yujito yelled. "I won't just give up. Matabi!" With the shout, she shifted into her stage 2 cloak as Naruto cursed. She charged him again, and like Kurama said, she was capable of resisting his Shinra Tensei. Sure, it slowed her down, but it no longer sent her soaring into the wall. His eyes widened as he saw her appear directly in front of him with a claw outstretched. "Shit!" He cursed as he was barely able to block with Shinryu as he was blasted to the opposite end of the arena. Knowing that he was losing as he withdrew 3 taels worth of chakra from Kurama. Now capable of reacting to her attacks, her next attack missed by a mile as he jumped away from her punch which cratered the ground. The Kages were growing concerned as the 2 Jinchuriki went at it. Hoping that no one got seriously hurt, Naruto charged Shinryu with wind chakra and was able to slash at Yujito and managed to siphon off some of her demon chakra. Realizing that she needed to gain distance from him, she launched a large fireball at him. Naruto absorbed the chakra from it again, but he knew that the attack was only meant to delay him from following up. She seemed to have forgotten that he can do more than repulse object. He stretched his hand out again. Yujito braced herself, expecting to feel herself getting pushed back, only to be caught off guard when she was pulled toward her blonde opponent, who proceeded to punch her into the ground and siphon off a large amount of chakra that reduced her back to stage 1. Cursing herself for forgetting that he can attract things, she immediately broke his hold and jumped away to avoid having her cloak weakened anymore. She tried to regain her second stage, but Naruto was having none of it as he sent a focused Shinra Tensei at her courtesy of Shinryu, which impacted into her gut harshly. 6. And probably would have knocked her out, or even killed her had she not had her Biju cloak activated. Though due to the daze of the blow she was unable to do anything as she was pulled back towards him as he grabbed her face and proceeded to absorb the rest of her demon chakra. Normally he wouldn't be able to do this. A normal person would get chakra poisoning from absorbing demon chakra. But since he's a Jinchuriki as well, of a more powerful Biju no less, he only feels his chakra cloak strengthen a bit, while the extra goes to Kurama for safekeeping. Now that her cloak was gone, the exhaustion and strain of using the cloak took its toll and she passed out from exhaustion. Hate came down and checked Yujito before he signaled for the medics and announced, "Winner of the first semi-final match, Uzumaki Naruto." All the Konoha citizens cheered at another one of their genin moving on. Up in the Kage booth, the Reikage grunted angrily at seeing his prized genin lose, while the Hokage smiled grandfatherly before holding his head in mild pain. Thinking back, he had been having a lot of headaches lately. Maybe I should go see the doctor after the exams. Sasuke's match against Temari wasn't too interesting as Sasuke's fire techniques had the advantage over her wind ones. Plus he was a lot faster than her, and defeated her pretty quickly once he got in close. Winner, Uchiha Sasuke. The crowd roared and fangirls screeched. Good thing there weren't any windows in the stadium, but unfortunately for Kabuto he had worn his best pair of glasses to watch the exams with which cracked from the frequency. Curses could be heard coming from the white-haired medic Nin as he swore that if a fangirl ever showed up as a patient of his they'd have a vocal cord-related accident that involved chakra scalpels. Due to the extensive damage to the stadium, we will be having a 1-hour break while it is repaired. Please use the bathroom and get food while you wait. Thank you for your patience.